That's why when they finally caught my ass, I had 15 guns stuck against my head. I'm thinking, who the fuck do they think I am? Escobar or some shit? Did a little bit of stint out west in LA for an entertainer during the day called Sammy Davis Jr., a member of the Rat Pack with Dean
Yeah, the
Martin.
Rat
And
Pack.
yeah, yeah. And I worked with those guys, especially Sammy. I was doing personal videotaping at that time for him. He wanted to watch television, but he didn't want to watch the commercials and all this shit. So my job was quite literally every week take him a television guide, and he would mark in the guide what shit he wanted to watch page by page, and I would have to sit in my apartment that was paid by him. My salary was paid by him, rent, and I mean everything. I had a car, rent a car, gasoline. I didn't pay for anything. Plus, he gave me a salary, which I wasn't spending. I was just throwing it in the bank, man. And my apartment had, different formats of video recording at that time. And there was only really two. There was
Yeah.
the 3/4 inch giant fucking Betamax things they called them, and VHS was just starting to come out, just becoming popular. This is like in 78, 77, 78-ish, around in there. And Richard Wayman, Sammy's financial advisor, who I got hooked up with, staying in the apartment at the same time, and he traveled a lot. So him and my cousin Joey, who got me the job, drove Sammy's tour bus for him. That's how I got hooked up and all that crap. But long story short, I got tired of that Hollywood crap. The bubble burst for me, man, once I figured out what all the vaccine shit was like, and how it really was. Television and movies just weren't the same for me anymore.
Wow.
All the mystique and all that,
Yeah.
what's left to your imagination shit just went gone, because that's not real.
Yeah.
They're filming MASH, and where are they filming it? Not in South Korea, dude. They're filming it just outside LA in the hills. And then that was just the magic of Hollywood that I was introduced to. Fuck that. So I went back to Wisconsin, and I got my Mustang, and I wasn't back there a day. And my buddy, who I grew up next door to on the lake, through high school.
That clock?
He's yeah, Mark Clark in the book, but his real name
Ah,
is Mark.
yeah.
And I can say his real name, and he doesn't mind it, But
Yeah.
when I was writing the book, several of the names I had changed, but I certainly didn't have to, because anyone that had been implicated in any of these federal operations or anything to do with smuggling during that time, I could say their name legally and not worry about any repercussion. But if
Yeah.
there were persons who were involved that had not been implicated, and there were a
Wow.
lot. I mean, there was a lot of people involved in shit that people didn't even know about.
Wow.
Like Captain Willie
Yeah.
in the book.
Wow.
His name is
Yeah.
actually, or Captain Red.
Yeah.
Actually, they wouldn't even usually let me use Willie because his real name's Billy. And
Wow.
I was going to call him Captain Willie, and they said, no, that's a little too close to Billy. And he didn't get implicated because he backed out. And he went into the background prior to all the other comings, everything goings on
Wow.
and stuff. So, and the statute of
Smart guy.
limitations is only 2 years, so he wound up, getting away, scot free, which was good for him. God bless his
Yeah.
ass. Mark called me one day after I got back from LA, and I was, up on the lake fucking around, and he says, dude, I'm moving to Florida tomorrow.
Wow.
He says, I've got a job lined up working on what they call a stone crab boat, pulling stone crab traps, and
Yeah.
his sister Nancy, who was, just a dear friend, just as a dear friend as he was to me. We were next door neighbors, for crying out loud. But her husband, she was married to one of the guys who was a native of the area, and he and her were running as managers, operating the only fish house on Chokoloskee Island at that time. All the other fish houses were on the next island over, which was Everglades. We were connected by a causeway. Mark being her brother, her husband being a native, they knew where we came from and they knew all about us, so there wasn't like, because people are going to ask this question, how does a guy from the Midwest, all of a sudden show up down there and start, hauling pots? Well, it didn't
Yeah.
happen like that. These
Yeah.
people just don't, if you come into town, this is, I mean, even today, that the two islands together, Everglades City and Chokoloskee, Everglades City itself, the population still isn't, is still under 500 people. But there's only so much land there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
can only get so many people on,
Yeah.
129 acres was Chokoloskee Island. That's all it is. And
Wow.
Everglades City's maybe 3 times that. So, I mean, you're only going to get, they're not making any more land, dude. You're not
Yeah.
going to get any more fuckers on there. So that's why I was, when somebody come into town, I mean, everybody knows you're there, man. I mean, you're not getting away with any kind of shit. Plus, I didn't go down there with any aspirations of becoming what I did or getting involved in what I got involved in, and as we'll get to. But you hear the stories, you hear the rumors, and that's what they all are, really. They're ghost stories, until you actually become one of those ghosts.
Yeah.
And so as it goes, Mark's working on this boat. It's coming toward the end of season, which is right about now. May 15th is the end of stone crab season. Then you have the summer off. Then October 15th in the fall, you begin to throw all your traps back in the water and get them set to be pulled. Our boat, our one boat, our 51-foot marine management, and I'll send a picture along too as well of the boat with myself and Mark on the back of it.
Yeah.
Our traps were only about 55 pounds ish, somewhere like that. They were maybe, I don't know, 25 inches wide by 28 inches deep by maybe 24 inches high. And they had just wooden, rubber. We used tires that we cut up and used as rubber hinges to open the lids. Turn the wooden handle like this and just flop the lid open, take the crab out, rebait it, and shut it. Now, there's a piece of polyvinyl chloride, PVC pipe that's about 4 inches wide and about that long, that's nailed inside the top of that lid. So when the crabs slide in, they can't get back out. And the reason they weigh as much as they do, being as small as they are, is because the bottom 6 to 7 inches of that trap is solid concrete. So when you shove that fucking thing back off the edge of the boat,
Yeah.
And sometimes we're pulling in 30 feet of water. Sometimes we're pulling in 8 feet of water on shore, and sometimes we've got traps offshore that are in as much as 60 feet of water. So you've got to have 80 plus feet of line on them because of the tide and the way the pulls the tide will pull your buoys under, or whatever. That's only because our one boat had 6,000 traps.
Whoa.
We were pulling 600 of these fucking things a day, one right after the other. And we'd go 300 traps one direction, going away from where we began. And you'd start it. And this is how it was imparted to me. You wake up at like 3 and get on the boat at 3:30 in the morning or so, because it takes so long to get to sometimes to where we need to be. The boat's not fast. These boats aren't designed for speed. They're designed for sheer power and sheer strength in the water. We've got a twin turbocharged 12-cylinder diesel running this engine and running this boat, and this engine is monstrous, man. But it's built to do heavy work, and it's got a 700-pound brass prop with four blades on it, and it's just a massive thing. So he says we get up about that early, get on the boat, shove off. You climb back in your bunk, which is in the wheelhouse, because everything's set forward, like I'll show you in the picture that I'll send you. And you just climb on the bunk until he kicks the bunk and says, "Hey, it's time to go. Let's go pull the traps." And it's right when the sun's just able to see the water. You can just make out the buoys, because we got a lot of work to do, man. We got, first of all, 300 traps to get through in the first half of the day. 300 traps can stretch as far as 17 to 20 miles. And they're set maybe 30 yards apart. That way, and there's 2 of us on the stern. There's only 3 guys on the boat. There's a captain, the first mate, and second mate. There's Clark and myself as first and second mate. Clark is on the port stern. I'm on the starboard stern, because I'm right-handed. He's left-handed, and it worked out perfect. Because when they're on that side of the boat, he can reach out with his left hand, grab that trap. Now, we're not doing like when I mentioned Deadliest Catch. The similarities are in this manner. That you see them throwing that grapple line out there between 2 bags that are floating. And there's a line strung between there that grapple grabs a hold of. And they take the hold. Now they can pull the rope in. Ours is just a single buoy, slightly smaller than a soccer ball, you might say. And it's got our number stamped on it, melted into it. So we know this is our string. And we have our individually made, and a lot of what we're called pullers. We design our own catch pole, it's called. And mine was simply maybe a 7-foot piece of 1x1 wooden pressure-treated lath material that I had taken a shark's tooth or shark hook, and I ground the barb off of it, and I adhered that to the end of the pole with fiberglass, and build a handle. And we're all designing our own shit. So all I had to do was reach out as far as I could reach, grab that buoy, pull it up, and take the buoy and put it through like this, through a block and tackle hanging there, and then down, and then put it around that thing. You see that giant thing on board that big crab boat spinning, that big disc. they put the rope through it like this, and it starts to coil it, grab it.
Yeah.
Well, what it is actually is designed like two pie plates together like this. And when you put the rope in between it, it cinches that rope and pulls on it.
Wow.
So that's what actually pulls on the rope. And then down below at about maybe 7 o'clock, if you look at it as a clock dial, there's another little piece sticking out between that thing like this. It's called a knife. It's not really a cutting tool.
Yeah.
What it does is it kicks the rope back out so it doesn't continue to wrap around that big
Yeah.
spinning disc. Now they can take theirs and pull it over and put it into a coiler that'll coil the rope for them, because they got like sometimes 5, 7, 800 feet of line, because
Wow.
they're fishing in sometimes 300 fathoms of water, and a fathom is as wide
Yeah.
as you can stretch your hands.
Yeah.
It's typically 6 feet.
Wow.
So they're only pulling just so many a day and shit like that. But the method is the same. It does the same thing. So when I pull my trap and it's coming up, Mark is on the other side. He's just finishing out cleaning his trap out of catch, rebaiting it, fixing it, repairing it, whatever needs to happen. And he has to do this within the time it takes me to get to my next buoy and to get ready to pull my trap, because when I pull my trap, he's pushing his back over.
Yeah.
We're always dropping one and picking one. We always drop one where we pick one off like this. So he has, from the time he pulls his trap till we get to the next one, to do all that. Empty the good crab out, replace the bait, fix the lathing on the trap and nail it all together, take knots out of the shit. And he needs to be ready, because when I grab mine, he's throwing his. So we get 300 done. And typically, we got so good at this after a while by just, because, we're not stupid guys. We're trying to, it's more advantageous to work smart rather than hard, but, the work in and of itself, regardless of how easy you tried to make or smoothly you tried to make it, it was still make a fucking man out of you in a hurry.
Yeah.
And I'm getting to this point here in just a second. Well, they're telling me this is how it's done. So you get first 300, and we got to a point where it's like 10 o'clock in the morning and we're having lunch already. That's how good we got at it.
Wow.
Then we skip over about 50 yards and pull 20 miles back the other way, the other 300.
Yeah.
And then, we're just taking it out of the crab traps. Some of the bull crabs we were catching have claws as big as my hand.
Yeah. Wow.
That's how big these fucking things are, man. I mean, they're a delicacy found only in these southern waters here.
Yeah.
And they're sold all over the world for the most ridiculous prices. That's why it's such a lucrative business.
Yeah.
So we did all right as stone crabbers. We were making a decent living, but you broke your fucking ass doing it, man. And most of the guys would last one season, maybe two.
Yeah.
So when we came down to Florida, Mark had his job ready to go on this boat, and he was already working. And the guy working next to him, who was actually the first mate, because Mark just came on, was some clown from Michigan or some state from up north and here in the States. And Captain Billy didn't really know him. Neither did his daddy, Hubert, Billy's father. They didn't really know anything about the guy in that. And obviously, due to, what I'm about to tell you, Billy was itching to get back and go to work. And so it didn't take him but a week, to work this guy to death, and he quit. That's just how badass of job this is, because it's ball busting work. And if you're not catching, you get to about 5, 10, 15 traps, and captain looks out there and he looks in those boxes where you're throwing this crab over your shoulder all day, loading the boxes and behind, because you take the claws from the crab and throw the crab back on your way home, because that crab will grow, and in 2 years it'll grow another claw back legal enough to take. So we're actually harvesting these crabs. If you get professional enough, you break the claw off just right. And throw it back, it'll generate and grow a new claw. So we're actually farming and harvesting these things. So you don't take the claw while you take the trap and put it back in there, because you're just throwing a crab back on your trap that doesn't have claws now, but it's stupid enough to climb back in there. So that being said, and the lucrativeness of the business could afford us, certain things that most people weren't normally available to them at, in a small fishing village such as that. And I could make, during a week, now it's seasonal work. From May 15th or October 15th to May 15th is season. So you have before that until then to get you can't start pulling your traps until October 15th, but you can get them out there.
Yeah,
You can
okay.
get them out there, and when that first day comes, you're ready to start fishing. You're not just taking your shit out.
Yeah.
And then by May 15th, by May 15th, you have to have your traps off the water by
Yeah.
May 15th. You can't catch up until that day and then go pick your traps up, because what are you doing? You're still catching as those traps are sitting out there.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be to your advantage to take those crabs that you just all caught, throw them all back in the water.
Yeah.
You know, rail dump them is what it's called. But
Yeah. Okay.
barring all of that, this is the scenario as it was imparted to me. So they get rid of this fucking guy from Michigan, right? Billy's like, get Timmy out here. See if Timmy wants to come to work on the boat. So they get me and they tell me the story about how you do it. You wake up, blah, 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 like I just told you. So my first day, I get up and about 3:30 in the morning, and I walk down, and two main modes of transportation on this 129-acre island. You're either bought a bicycle, actually three ways. You've either got a bicycle, you've either got a golf cart, or you got your 2 fucking feet. Bare feet, because I mean it's not
Wow.
that big a place. You're not going to drive over to your buddy's house. I mean, just get the damn
Wow.
car started, get it in gear, and you're parking the fucking.
Yeah.
But
Foot
cool
Falcon.
place to grow up, as a kid, anyways, amongst all those islands. And we were literally Chukaluski Island is, and I'll send you pictures also of the overview of what's called the 10,000 Islands. And this is a rather unique piece of geography that is only found right here in Southwest Florida, like it's found anywhere else in the world. You won't find it like this. And it's literally a labyrinth of 10,000 mangrove islands with little cuts and corners and turns and dead ends and shit that you don't even know are there unless you live here. This is where we played as kids, man. We were running this shit. I
Yeah.
mean, it's in our backyard, quite literally.
Yeah.
And when you're running boats as kids and fucking off and doing shit, and you're running the outer islands, you're finding these little tricks and
Yeah.
hideouts and ways to go. Well, you have to continuously do this, because what you're seeing is all done by visual cue. There's no markers out there and shit, to follow. There's no
Yeah.
signs that says fucking turn here, none of that shit. And that's always changing. So you always have to be aware, and you have to be on top of your game, always out there fucking around. And that's what we were always doing, because I mean, there's not much else to do in Everglades, man. But
Yo.
get your boat and go screw off, or in an airboat and go fuck off in the weeds in the glades somewhere or some shit like that, but ours was that labyrinth of islands, and that's what made what we were doing so incredibly and I don't want to say easy and sound blasé in that manner of speaking, but it was knowing the islands and knowing how to get in and out of them and where to go and where not to go was a huge advantage when you're bringing a load of marijuana into this country.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, my first day going out on this boat, like I said, 3:30, I'm in the boat. I get my lunch. We cast off. I climb in the bunk and I'm snoozing away. And I've never done the best sleeping I've ever done in my life was done on a boat. And because you hear that, all you hear is that deep rumble of that engine, that big diesel engine, and the boat's doing its rocking and it's doing its thing. And man, it's just a lullaby to me, And I wake up and the sun's fucking up already, and I'm thinking to myself, thought we were supposed to be starting when just before the sun comes up. The goddamn sun's shining right through the fucking window. I can see it, right? I leaned over and I looked out of the bunk, and there's Billy, Captain Red in the book. He's looking down at me from his chair, and he goes, Timmy, he says, dude, we're not going to pull traps today, buddy. He says, we're going to hang off out here all day today and, and screw around and maybe swim a little bit, fish. And, and then this afternoon, we're going to go offshore a little bit further and unload a pop boat from Colombia. And I said, okay, boing, what the fuck? Okay, yeah, sure, why not? And it was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek sort of an affair for Mark and Billy, because they knew what the fuck was going on. They want to spring it on me when I got out there, because they know I'd be cool with it,
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, okay, what the hell? So my first day, I never pulled a stone crab ever that first day.
Yeah.
So we go out that night later, and the way this part of the scenario works is you typically wait off the horizon, what's called the horizon, anywhere. If you're in the outback or you're out in the water, as far as you can see, things will shrink and disappear like this. When they get to the point where you can't see them any longer, That's your horizon line. And on the water, that horizon line is typically 10 miles, 10 to 12 miles, depending on how high above the water your vessel is sitting at your, from your point of view. 10 miles. So we would sit off that horizon line where you couldn't see the loaded vessel we're going to approach. And when it came 3-4 hours before sundown, that's when the captain and every boat that came to us had a particular call sign that they would listen for. He would call out that call sign once or twice and wait for a response. Once we got that response, then we would take off toward that boat that was sitting on the coordinates that we knew it was supposed to be sitting on, because in those days there wasn't such a thing as GPS.
Yeah.
We were using what was called LORAN, and that's an acronym for Long Range Aid to Navigation. That's what everybody in the fucking world used, a LORAN.
Yeah.
It was sent out by radio signals, triangulated, and the antennas on the boat, the low-ran antennas, would pick up those signals and triangulate your location. And they were quite accurate. I mean, they were really very accurate, surprisingly. It would put me within a couple of feet of a dive spot or a wreck that I want to dive on all the time. I mean, amazing technology even at that time.
Yeah.
But GPS being what it is today makes that look like, a black and white television, I guess nothing in comparison. But we would start approaching this vessel once we got a reply, so they know that the boat coming to it is the one that should be, don't freak out. And that gives them time to start bringing the load and getting it from underneath, because their shit's hidden down underneath, whether it's a shrimp boat or a freighter or whatever this stuff is on. And there wound up being 15 tons, 30,000 pounds on this boat that night. And we pulled up next to it. And this is in one of the cases whereby we didn't have to get up on that boat and help that crew get it out of the hole, stack it on deck and then get on our boat. Then they could throw it down. We always helped each other out in that respect. But don't get me wrong, there was none of this, hey, dude, how you doing? I'm catching it. There was none of that shit going on. I was like, get to fucking work. Hey, what's up, bro? Get to work and throw fucking bales until you puke, because it's hot down there. The engines are running and you're unloading this, 15 tons of shit or whatever. And, you puke and you throw some more bales, because once you start, you can't stop. You got to finish the fucking job. There's no quitting until it's where it belongs, and that's on the island. So we grab our 15 tons that night and we head back in. And when we get it into shore, just to the outside rim of the 10,000 islands, as I described, we would kill our engine. Now we're not hiding this shit. It's all over the deck. I mean, it's stacked in a big, huge mountain on the back of this boat. In the earlier days, the bales were coming in what we called pillow bales. They weren't even packed. I mean, compressed like a normal, like people see in the television or the news or in books or magazines, what a bale, a brick bale, rectangular one looks like. They didn't look like that in the early days. They hadn't gotten to that degree of sophistication yet. These were just like somebody put their foot in the bag and went like this, and then put some tape around it and then put it in a burlap bag and then sewed that shut, and they were coming all different sizes. I'm seeing them from 40 pounds to 120 pound big. I mean, who the fuck's going to pick this thing up? And by the time we got to them, there's no telling how many times these things have been handled. Some of them got cuts in the side of them and they're leaking. And, and the weed in those days, the smoke in those days, it was all Caribbean with marijuana. And the same over in your end of the world, coming out of Thailand or places such as that, in Vietnam, places such as that, it was seedy. The only Caribbean weed that I ever saw during those times that wasn't as seedy as all the rest of it came from Jamaica.
Wow.
They were more in tune with what they call the virgin bud vine. The virgin bud being the female plant, which is the one you want.
Yep.
You don't want the male plant, because the male plant's the one that's causing all the cross-pollination and was causing all the seeding to happen. But when you're growing it, and I've been into Colombia, I can't tell you how many times, and looking down between the mountains and seeing a quarter way up the mountainside and all the way down through the valley as far as you can see weed growing. I mean, pot, Colombian weed, just as far as it can see growing. This is how ridiculous it is. So there's very impossible for you to keep males away from females. So the shit was seedy. That being said, we're having to work with this shit. You're sending us this shit And not only do we have to take it from you and put it on our big boat, by the way, that first 30,000 pounds that we did, that very first time I ever saw a bale of pork come off a boat, I never saw a load that small. That was considered small, 15 tons. I never saw one that small after that.
Oh,
The very second night we went out to work on that boat, or that day we went out to work on that boat, we didn't work the second day either. For 2 days, I go to work on this fucking boat. I didn't see the first crab trap, man. That night, that second night, we unloaded a boat with 22 tons on it. We had to get up and help that crew put that shit up on the deck, and then help them, then have them toss it down to us. And we had it stacked, Jesus, on the bow of the boat, on the sides, up to the windows, and then on the wheelhouse. You got the wheelhouse, and then you got the antennas, and you got the radar turning. We stacked it up just high enough where the radar could turn,
yeah.
and all the way straight back till we almost sunk the fucking boat. I mean, that's how much weed. And because of the way it was packaged, it wasn't baled and bundled nicely. I mean, it was nasty.
Yeah.
We get it back in and we give it to whoever, and knowing the shore crew does their thing. They take it from us. We pull up to shut our engines off. 15, 20, sometimes 30, depending on how big the loads are that are coming in. We brought in as much as 55 tons a night, just to give you an idea. That being said, the boats would have to make, they come up to us as soon as we kill our engines. They hear us. They're waiting on us.
Yeah.
They come up to us and stop, and they got 2 guys on each boat, and they're like as many as you could get around this boat, because we're not hiding this shit. There's no way to hide 22 tons of shit put on this 51-foot boat, dude. I mean, it's everywhere. The boat rolls too hard one side, this shit's rolling off. I mean, that's how much shit there's on this boat. And so they take it as many trips as they can back and forth through these islands, not through the main passages. We've made our own passageways that only we know about to get through to the island where we live, Chokoloskee, and one of the inner islands, and literally put the entire load into 1 or 2 of our friends' houses that we've literally taken all the furniture out of. And we fill the house from the back to the front, man. We fill the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the living room, the kitchen, the dining room, closets, every place you could stick a bale of weed. This shit was in there, right? And if the house was full, shut the door and move next door to Jimmy's house, start putting the shit in his house, right? So you've got us who bring the load in. You got the boat that came from Colombia. You got all those little boats with 2 guys on each boat, that bring the shit and shuttling it from us to the house. You've got the bale handlers on shore moving it from the boats into the house. You got the guys in the house stacking this shit everywhere. I mean, it takes a lot of people. It takes anywhere from, 50 to 60 people to make one job work, because there's so many different moving pieces.
Yeah.
I haven't even gotten halfway with the scenario yet. Now, while the house is being loaded at night, a lot of times what the drivers, this is the next day, we move this shit to Miami out of these houses in broad daylight the next day. That's when that work is done.
Yeah.
We're masters of hide the shit in plain sight, basically. And you just started reading the book, so hang on to your fucking shorts, dude. That's a story coming.
Yes.
And I do describe this scenario in my book, whereby, the owners of the vehicles are never the ones that drive the material to Miami. Yeah. And the owners of the boats are never on those boats that go offshore to do the work, or any on the water work. And there's a reason for that. Reason being is that if the boat is ever captured or vehicles are ever stopped, the driver has what's called a 2-meter radio. And we had hundreds of these things, because we're not only working on our crew. Hell, there were 5 crews in Southwest Florida that we were working, that I ultimately wound up working all 5 crews. When we get to that point, I'll help you understand. 50 to 60 people easy on each crew. So the entire southwest coast of Florida was hauling weed in the 70s and 80s, man. And it was all coming, through us primarily, because we had our generations. I was what was considered a 3rd generation pot hauler. That meant that the guys and gals that I grew up with learned from the fathers and the uncles and the older cousins, who in turn learned from the generation prior to them. So we were 3rd generations into this thing. Yeah. That's how, over the years, the sophistication and the method by which this was all done got so sophisticated, because we were learning as the generations come by, and new technology and new equipment, and it's just the shape and the way of life, man. It's the way of the world. But more importantly, to this part of the story, was that the owners of the vehicles would a lot of times drive out to the houses at night while they're being loaded and get their vehicle loaded ahead of time. drive it back into town and park it right in the front yard. I mean,
Wow.
with, 2,000-3,000 pounds of shit.
It's just
If it's a van or it's a truck or it's a Bronco or something, you could black the windows out on it or whatever. They would take airbags,
yeah,
put them in where the springs, inside the springs, inflate those airbags so the vehicle wouldn't compress. So when you
yeah,
put the weight in there, it just read level like it was supposed to.
yeah,
Get it to Miami and unload the shit, then you just reach underneath and with your fingers, there's a little valve, just like on your tire.
wow.
Let the air back out and it'll step back down like it's supposed to, nice and level. So you never know when it's full or it's empty. Just
It's
one another
crazy.
little trick in the trade. So when the next day, when it's daylight and the sun's coming up, that's when the shore crew starts to take over and do their job. Now their job is to empty that fucking house of that 22 tons, or depending on how many tons are on the island. And I mean, at one point I've seen, 8 houses full to the
Wow.
rim. 8 houses. I mean, talking full family, single family
Yeah,
home, full to the front door, full of shit. That's how much stuff I've seen on the island at any one
yeah,
time. And the next day is when the cars and the trucks and the vans and the women get involved and they drive this shit to Miami. They're giving us a
yeah,
place to go, a particular plaza or a strip mall or someplace like that. Typically on the east side of Miami, in an area off of what's called Chrome Avenue and
yeah,
Kendall. Between there and Homestead is when you start getting to the next Isle Morada, but then you get to the Keys, going that direction. But they take it to us, they're told where to go to this plaza, park the vehicle in the parking lot of this plaza, get out of it and go window shop for a while. And we would have one of our crew working with the Miami crew, one of their guys who actually owned the shit. We never wanted to own it.
yeah,
We were getting paid to get it, buy it, bring it into the country for X number of dollars a pound. We'll put this shit right on your doorstep. You pay us. We don't want to fuck with selling it, because now you got the dealers and the sellers and you got,
yeah,
screw that. We we were making enough. I mean, the money was a pain in the ass enough as it is, man. We don't need any more. I'll get to that too. We'll take this shit to Miami, and if you owe us $20 million, let's say, for doing this particular load for you, now we don't get paid. And the most common misconception about how all this shit works is that I bring your shit into you and I give it to you in Miami. I get paid and I drive home with the money. Well, I'm sorry.
yeah,
Excuse me. Doesn't happen that way.
yeah,
I have to get paid when that load begins to sell.
yeah,
Once that load begins to sell, I get paid out of that job. So
yeah.
it could be a week, 2 weeks, before I even see any money at all from that job. But in
Wow,
that 2 week period, I may have done 3 or 4, 5 more
yeah,
jobs in the meantime, and as a
wow,
kid doing this shit, going offshore and unloading these boats. And from time to time, of course, I'd get that paper bag full of cash slid across the kitchen table at me.
wow.
And there were times when I was getting a big bag of cash, several of them at a time, for jobs I don't remember having done. That's just how it was, growing up as a kid. I'm 21 years old. Imagine this, growing up with your friends, you're kicking around, you're on an island, you're barefoot and you're in shorts all the time. You're averaging 100 to 150,000 plus a week, 150,000 US dollars a week, just fucking off. I mean, dude,
That's
imagine that.
crazy.
So, so here comes these paper bag books. That's how it worked. And the reason it worked that way was simply because if you owe me $20 million, it's going to take you 2 weeks or 3 weeks to generate enough money to start paying us. I'll send, by the time I'm buying this, or we're buying this stuff in the Caribbean, anywhere in the Caribbean you wanted to buy weed from, we had a connection there.
Yeah,
Jamaica, Venezuela, South America, Central America,
wow,
Panama, Belize, Honduras. Belize, even before it became Belize, was British Honduras. And we could buy it for $10 a pound. When you get that same $10 pound shit into United States territorial waters, it now becomes anywhere between 500 and 750 a pound. So I could literally take $300,000 of some jackass cocaine cowboy's money from Miami
yeah,
to the Caribbean and buy them 30,000 pounds of weed. And by the time I get that shit to Miami, I've turned that $300,000 into 15 million or more. Now, a job that size, 30,000 is around 5 million. So You just made $10 million off a $300,000 investment in 8 days. That's typically how long it takes to get from loaded South Caribbean, northern Colombia to Florida, barring any other unforeseen weather circumstances, or what have you. 8 days, I turned 300,000 into 15 million. You think these fucking guys are shooting at me?
Yeah.
Dude, they can't give me money fast enough to go back. I mean, it was like,
Wow.
woohoo! It was super lottery, time, and that's
Yeah.
why it became so lucrative and so, and that's what started the ball rolling when these guys discovered it. Hey man, look what the fuck they're doing over here,
Yeah.
So that being said, what I would do is if you, like I said, if you owed me that $20 million, that shit came in. I sent it all down to Miami, except for $20 million worth of it. I'll keep it at somebody's place here in Naples or in, close by. And now that he's gone and passed away, I'll go ahead and say, this is the first podcast I've ever let this bit of information go, just so you know.
Wow.
Only because the gentleman was such a dear, dear friend of mine. Since I was a kid, we worked together and did some shit together, some crazy shit together. He passed away several years ago, unfortunately, because he's just, as older men do. But he was the mayor of Everglades City during that time we were working, and I was working as a kid. He had been mayor even to the point through over the years, for God knows how many 10 decades he was mayor of this town. But when I was keeping your $20 million worth of shit, I was keeping it at the mayor's house.
Holy shit, man.
So that just gives you an idea of how connected we were at that point in time. I mean, the older generations, they had senators and judges and congressmen on the payroll. I mean, this wasn't it wasn't a violent industry when our generations were involved in it. And simply because of the numbers I just explained to you. If I can turn 300 grand into 15 million in 8 days, you fucking crazy, dude.
Yeah.
You leave this fucking guy alone.
Yeah.
You leave these people alone, man. You don't fuck with them. So that's why it was so. And they kept coming back, and then
like
consequently,
the golden goose.
as we talked about the bales being what they were. I mean, they had gotten to the point where I was literally, my partner and I, Clark in the book, Mark, I'm going to say Mark every now and then, but remember that's Clark in the book. Should you get the book? And please buy the book, by the way, because you'll never hear this story from anybody other than reading it right there or hearing it come out of this pie hole right here. Because the U.S. government's never going to tell you the story. They're never going to tell you how a bunch of kids got over on them for years, because even during the years when the adults were, had the running the show, it was us kids that were doing all the fucking work. Think about it. You think all these old timers are out there, moving 800 to 1,000 80-pound fucking bales of weed sometimes two times a night? You think they're doing that shit? Oh, no. That's the kids' job. You guys do this, do this, do this, do this, do that. And that was a testament really to the fact that the violence aspect in which I spoke of. Because thinking about it, and me as a father and a grandfather now, thinking back on it, who in their right fucking mind would put their children's lives at risk by allowing them to go offshore and unload freighters full of marijuana from other countries if that sort of violence took place? Think about it. The violence didn't happen that way simply because they were making too much fucking money. You're not going to fucking kill people that are making you multimillionaires overnight. That being said, part of the job was get this shit off the boat, get them, and then whatever the shore crew did with it, that was their problem. We had to go offshore and clean up. Now it's like 2, 3 in the morning. Now we got to go clean this fucking shit off the boat, and then maybe pull a couple of traps the next morning and then come in, because it's not uncommon for a boat such as ours, a work vessel, to spend the evening, out on the water, due to whatever reasons maybe they want to get more catch, or maybe they just, because crabs will stay that way, but regardless. And we go offshore, and I had literally, dude, Tommy, I have literally swept into piles with brooms and an ice shovel, big fucking ass ice shovel, and scooping through this shit overboard. I've literally probably thrown more overboard than 100 people can smoke in their lifetime, man, easily. And I bet I've dumped out of my boots more shit than 20 men could smoke in their lifetime. It was that nasty. And we're going for screwdrivers and knives and shit, trying to get it out of the cracks and clean it up, and finally, we go off to do a job one night, and Captain Billy had gotten, 3 rolls of visqueen plastic and 5 rolls of duct tape. And what we wound up doing was literally lining the inside of this boat from the back of the wheelhouse all the way to the stern,
Yeah.
because it's an open deck vessel. I mean, it's wide fucking open. It was designed to carry the stone crab as we stacked them on there. 600 of them at a time. That's 40,000 plus pounds of fucking traps, or shit like that. And by its nature, it's very perfectly designed for putting bales of pod. When they became bales of pod, what I'm talking about now is the mess they were making. Because if something should have become suspect, or for whatever reason, and they're out there looking around and they're just arbitrarily boarding vessels, and they get on your shit and find a bud or a seed or some shit like that, your ass is gone.
Yeah.
They'll confiscate the boat. They'll ask questions later. They'll just take your shit. So it was important to stay clean.
Yeah.
So that was our job. Clean this fucking thing up. Get as much sleep as we can, if there was any to be gotten, because it took so long. But now we figured out the plastic thing. So, okay, bring that shit on. So now when we go offshore to clean the boat up, it was just a simple matter of pulling it all together and tying a chain around it with a big giant anchor and throwing the fucker overboard. Now the boat's clean. So we're going on like this for, I don't know how, but one season of hauling, pot went like this. And then the bales started coming, because the older generation said, look, that's enough of this shit. Us having to be responsible for your shit once we take it off of your boat, or once we put it on our boat from Colombia or wherever we're getting it. Now we are responsible for somebody else's shit, because we paid you.
Yeah.
We're responsible for this shit. And you're giving us shit that's fucking, I mean, I've been on boats as a kid, just as a matter of course, just a little sidebar here. Clark and I on board. A lot of times, like I said, we get out and help that crew get shit on deck first, because depending on how many houses and crews we had available, to take 3-4 days to unload one boat. I mean, that's how stupid and ridiculous this shit was.
Yeah.
But what wound up happening was the older generations finally, in the early 80s, say 80-ish, 79, going on 80s, when the advent of the household and commercial trash compactors started coming on the scene, you started seeing commercials about them and shit like this. Well, bing, fucking light goes on, and some of these guys take about 4 or 5 of these compactors down to Colombia, and they said, look here.
Yeah.
Here's what we're going to do.
Wrap this up.
So they got a bank of maybe 3 generators running in the background, and they've got these trash compactors, and now it's throw some shit in there, compact it. Throw some more shit in there, compact it. Now the bales are coming out all the same size, all the same, pretty much the same weight. And they're rectangular, a lot more easier to handle. So by the very nature of changing what they do and the way they did it in South America, all of a sudden made our loads bigger.
Yeah.
Because now they're more compacted. Now they're more stackable. Now they're easier to handle. So we just lit a fuse, man, that went right straight through the Caribbean and every other pot hauler in America. And I'm always fond of saying, and and I always will, that we're not the only ones hauling fucking pot, man.
Yep.
I mean, there were pot haulers all over the United States doing their thing, and and God bless their asses, whether they made it or not, they were contributing to what is now being viewed across most of the world as something that was should have had a skull and crossbones attached to it, to being something that is relatively benign. Or actually good for you, in a matter of speaking, in a lot of ways, considering the cannabinoid aspect. But that's a whole other thing for a whole other time. But needless to say, now the jobs are getting bigger, they're getting heavier, we're getting paid more, but it's moving a whole lot quicker and a whole lot faster. That was one of the advantages to growing up in the industry and seeing that evolutionary change. And what ultimately wound up happening was, we had worked, and there's a chapter you're going to read about in the book, Thomas, where our crew worked 28 nights in a row. And a lot of the guys that were working at that time, the guys and gals that were working with, would have said it was more than that, but I left it at 28. And that's night after night. That's 30 tons. And now that first job I ever did, that one that I told you about, that 15 tons. I had never since that day saw one that small. That was just like a test run. That was to see if you guys could, do the work, kind of a thing. Because the next night was 22 tons. Now they're 20 tons. They're 30 tons. We did 55 tons one night. When it wasn't because of the money. I mean, the money was a pain in the fucking ass, and everybody was having a problem with it. Really, it was more about see how much we can do this time and get away with it. It was that kind of a game after a while.
Wow.
So during that stretch, during that run, I had, and because of the way things worked, and with the 2 meter radios that I talked about, and we had like 200 of these things because everybody that's hauling or touching a bale of pot has one of these radios. Even if you're working next to a guy working right next to you, he's got one too. Everybody on the 50, 60 person crew that's working day and night has this radio because communication is, I mean, by far one of the most important things that could take place when you're doing something like this is communication. Now, when we're running from a mothership, as they're described, bringing the load inshore from the mothership so the little boats can grab it, put it on the island, and so on. We have running alongside of us what's called a chase boat. I'll send you a picture of my personal chase boat. In this case, it's a 31-foot Chris Craft Scorpion with 400 horsepower, 200 offshore Mercs, twins, that'd probably do 60 mile an hour before your ass even hit the sea. Designed for offshore, deep V offshore. It's a rugged and a shallow drafting, a rugged offshore deep V, all around just kick-ass boat. It cost me $90,000, for this boat. But that was like a night's work, man. But that being said, the reason why that boat is there, and it's called a chase boat, is because if we have 1, 2, or 3 boats working alongside coming from the mothership loaded, dude, like I said, we're not hiding this shit. There's no way to hide, 20 tons of shit on a boat this size. If you were to fly over our boat and look at it from an airplane from above, loaded like it was, it would look like a huge mound of bales moving through the water with a radar on it, because you couldn't see the boat. That's how much shit was on these things. So we're moving, 2 or 3 at a time. We've got this chase boat running there empty alongside of us. One guy in it, and he's sitting over there. He's fired up and he's smoking away, and we're sitting on our big stack because the captains are busy in the wheelhouse doing their job. They're on the radar. You're listening to radar. They're monitoring all the channels and all this shit. I mean, they're dialed in. They're doing their job. We did ours.
Yeah.
We offloaded that fucking mothership and loaded this bitch, and now we're sweating through our fucking clothes.
Yeah.
Now we're going to sit on this fucking shit, and we're going to try some of it. So if it's any good, we can tell the guys on shore, hey, you need to grab some of this shit. That's just how it worked. So I'm checking it out. I'm smoking on my fucking spleef, and I look over at Mikey, and he's in the chase boat alongside of us. And what that boat's designed for is if the Captain Billy, any of the other captains will have a radar that they can watch. Now that's 50-mile radius, and you can shrink it down to 45 to 40 to 35 to 30, 25, and down like that. So as the target gets closer, you can shrink in and zero in on it exactly to get a more definitive radar return to see if that boat's coming to us. Fucking, we just get off onto that other boat right there next to us and let them have the shit. We're gone. They never even knew we were there. They show up and there's nobody on these boats because why? First of all, the owners of the boat, Captain Billy, didn't own the boat. His daddy did. If it looked like they were going to get busted and certainly beyond a doubt get boarded, he would get on the radio and call home to Dad and say, hey, Dad, jig's up. Dad would immediately hang up and call the Marine Patrol or law enforcement and report that boat stolen. Or hijacked or some shit because we don't know where it is. And what will wind up happening is, and the vehicle's done the same way. If they get stopped or whatever, for whatever reason, they call and say, hey, then that owner says, hey, I looked out the driveway and shit, my truck's gone. My car's gone. Well, them having reported it stolen relieves them of any responsibility for which that thing has been involved in. It'll be used and stored as evidence, but ultimately returned to the owner. So that everybody gets their shit back. So that was another thing involved in it. Now, when it came to the guys driving this shit to Miami and the gals, now we're unloading a house, at any one time, any day for 28 days. Imagine 28 nights in a row, 30 tons, 40 tons one night, 55 tons that one night. Then that every next night we're doing another 30. We're doing this, and everybody on the island, and we could only work 2 or 3 nights in a row because, dude, You try to work a crew or a couple of guys any longer than that, you kill their ass.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we're moving 800 at the minimum, 800 bales a night. Sometimes we're off the big boat to our boat, from our boat to their boat. It's being moved several times.
Yeah.
Your ass is burned the fuck out. So you got to take a break.
Yeah.
Let another crew or another couple of guys that are, I mean, that's why a town of just under 500 people, half the fucking town was involved in it, because this is just what it took to get the job done, you know? When it say it takes a village, yeah, well, in this case, it took a fucking village.
Yeah.
So that being said, you know, I've got one of my days off, and it was just after that 55-ton night. I made $75,000 that night.
Wow.
I'm 22. I'm 22 years old. You know, Jesus.
That's crazy.
So I had the next couple of days off. So you know, I'm going to go check these houses out, you know, where we've put all of this shit, where we're sticking all this shit, and all these cars are going by during the day. I mean, they're driving off the island, waving at the sheriff, waving at the deputy, anybody that might be watching. They're just driving. Who would expect 40 tons of weeds coming out of this little island? And to be honest with you, there's only one way in there and one way out. There's only one fucking road, dude. I mean, it's got to come out of there somehow. But they didn't know. They didn't know to the extent to which this was taking place. So it was easy to be considered, you know, hiding in plain sight, which we were bloody masters of. And, you know, and wave at you a lot of times when we're going past you and this sort of thing. But with that regard, see, we had our safety valve out on the water, which was a chase valve. Now, what the drivers have from this 120-mile trek, they got to take across from Florida, from Everglades City to Miami. It's about 120 miles. They've got to drive this one fucking road. US 41 is the only road they take you from Everglades City directly to Miami. There's only one way to do it. That's that road. Now you're out there with your ass hanging in the wind. That's something I always thought, that these guys and gals driving these cars and trucks, they're the ones with the brass balls.
Yeah.
These guys, these are the ones that have their shit together, because there's no fucking way. I'm always telling myself, there's no goddamn way you'd catch me driving this shit. You know, I'm out here on the water. I got that chase boat, dude. We're gone off in the night, and we're gone. You know, we're good to go. But what the drivers had was, during any one job, no less than between 8 and 12 to 15 what we called spotter drivers. These guys and gals' job was to do nothing but drive from Everglades to that mall and back.
Wow.
They got paid $5,000 a day. All they had to do was drive over and drive back, and they were all staggered, 12 of them driving this route. So if anybody got stopped for whatever reason in the world they may have gotten stopped for, they're instructed and they were taught to, because now that your van, typically we're using vans because, you know, we get 30 pieces of 35 bales in a van. Now it weighs, you know, a ton or 2 tons more than it's supposed to. And what happens is, now you've got a pretty good hefty weapon to your advantage. And this, you wait for whoever stops you to get between their vehicle and yours. Throw that fucker in reverse and stomp on it. I mean, and take the front end right out of that goddamn police, that highway patrol or whatever, whoever, the Marine Patrol or whoever he is, and he ain't going anywhere because his shit's gone, you know, because you just smashed the holy fuck out of it all. But you're not going to outrun the radio. All you have to do is take that thing now and drive it down the road far enough around a bend or something where he can't see you. Leave the fucker right there in the middle of the road, get out, get into a spotter's car that's already there waiting for you, because you've already called and said, hey, gig's up, you know. The vehicle's already been reported stolen. You're already out of it by the time they get to it, and you're gone. You're already sitting at home. Free and clear. That's just how it worked. So there was a safety mechanism built into both aspects of this, which is all part of the sophistication with which this, you know, this thing came to. Now, once these guys begin to pay me, or pay the big dogs or whatever, say they give you 10 million on your 20 that they owe you, then I would give you 20 million of the stuff that I've kept. You trade, you give me my money, I give yours. And the reason it was done that way was simply because you lose your shit in Miami for whatever reasons. We don't want to hear any fucking excuses. We're getting paid. I can make one phone call, sell that shit to one individual, and we're all getting paid. That guaranteed us getting paid. That's the reason why we kept it. We're doing this 28-day stretch. I was paid $75,000 that night to, you know, work offshore. Now I'm on shore. The next day, we're taking a couple of days off because this is our time, to have our 3 days or whatever off. And
Yeah.
I just happened to walk over to one of the houses that has some of this shit in it. We just brought in, and they're loading the trucks and the cars and the vans. They're sending them off and shit. And I see one of the big dogs you'll read about in the book, Daryl, one of the five Daniels brothers,
Yeah.
who's, they were actually, I grew up with their kids. They were part of the third generation. They were teaching their kids how to do this shit so they could continue the family business. Because the story that I wrote about when I talked about us not being the only pot haulers there were, of course we weren't. The
Yeah.
story that I talk about is a very unique one in that for 3 generations and nearly 40 years this went on and nobody had a fucking clue that nearly the entire town was involved in this for 3 generations. And the millions upon millions of pounds of weed that went across those two little islands, nobody had a clue.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I had to write the book and write the story and tell it the way I did, and be as truthful as absolutely possible in telling it, because getting the grown-ups or the older generation's blessing to write the book in the first place, because I wouldn't done it out of sheer respect, because I'm opening the book, man, and I'm telling you exactly, because what we all decided was pretty much in a nutshell that, of course, we weren't willing to wait 30 or 40 years for someone, some journalist or some half-ass historian to take this story and this one and this one and this one and patch quilt together what they think took place.
Yeah.
We weren't going to allow that to happen. So we all agreed that it should be told by someone who was there, actually, someone who had been involved in as much as I've been involved in it, and tell it truthfully and accurately so the world will understand how this was done generationally. And this is the story that I talk about, and the uniqueness of it, and how it was done in such a non-violent, family-oriented fashion to let people understand that this industry can be done that way, because it was. We proved it for over 30 years and 3 generations that not one gun did I ever see growing up as a kid, ever, never. And it was never even talked about. We were never threatened. And I'm asked about, weren't you afraid? I mean, fuck no. It was just what I knew. It was what we knew as kids. This is all we knew was, 30-ton fucking loads of weed. That's all. I mean, there was nothing spectacular about it. It's just like, okay, another night's work. Here we go. And then a lot of times there would be more there than we expected there to be. And there's some stories I love to tell about that too. But we're working these night after night after night. And because of the way things happened in Miami with the dead drops, our guy would get out, their guy would get in, go empty the vehicle and bring it back empty. Our window shopping guy would get back in the vehicle and go take it and load it again if there was more time during the day. That's how these drops were made in Miami. They were what the law enforcement now describes as a dead drop. We were creating what is now called the dead drop. Our drivers drive to the plaza in Miami they're instructed to go to, park the fucking thing and get out of it, go window shop. And then their guys, like I said, we'd have one of our guys with one of their guys. That's our truck, that's our van, that's our car. They're pointing. Their guys would go get in them, take it to wherever their stash was and empty the fucking thing and bring it back. Once it came back, our people would get back in it and go make another run if there was time. That's why one side ever met the other side. And because the drivers of the vehicles never owned the vehicle, the drivers never loaded the vehicle because the owners did that. So even if one of them was busted, they couldn't tell anybody where any of the shit was because nobody ever knew it. The drivers didn't know where in Everglades the shit was because it was already loaded when they got it. And the people in Miami, they couldn't tell them where it was in Miami because the guys in Miami took it from them and took it somewhere and brought it back empty. So there was that buffer between us.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
No one, exactly. And this is how the whole thing evolved. The only people that ever saw or communicated with one another was maybe one or two of the adults or the five brothers, the Daniels brothers, and their Cuban counterparts in Miami that they were working with. They would set up the loads and where to pick them up or how much did you want? We'll go do it. And there was 2 different ways of doing this. For $175 a pound, I could go, or during that day, they would go anywhere in the Caribbean and buy you as much as you wanted, as much shit as you wanted for $10 a pound and put it on your doorstep for $175 a pound. That's what you paid us per pound to do that. Or you could go get your own shit from wherever, bring your boat out to a pre-designated set of coordinates, and we'll take it from you. bring it and put it on your doorstep. We'll get it into the United States for $145 a pound. We'll do that part for you.
Wow.
But most of them always option for us just do the whole thing. They don't want to
Yeah.
fuck with it. So that's why I found myself, doing my first job ever that I did when I met these Cuban guys. And how that happened simply quite was the day we did that 55 tons. Several days prior to that, during our last days off, Daryl, one of the big dogs, cornered me because I went over to the house to see how shit was going on, and which was a mistake. And because a couple of days prior to that, like I said, during my day off, he had handed me and my buddy Jimmy a chainsaw and a wrecking bar, big metal steel fucking wrecking bar. And he pointed to this brand new Winnebago, 40-foot fucking Winnebago, dude. It had 120 miles on it. That's how new this thing was. Most of those miles came from the dealership to get it down to Everglades, And he says, I want you to go into that thing and strip everything that you can strip out of that goddamn thing from the windows down. I want it gone. And we even took out the seats. We stripped the captain's chair seats and everything. We threw them out the fucking door. So when you look at this thing, you could see the curtains and the cabinets and stuff. Yeah. But if you were tall enough where you could walk up to it, look in the window like that, there was nothing, man. I mean, it was stripped down to the bare nothing. Wires were cut and everything. I mean, the plumbing was cut. I mean, you name it. They stacked 11,500 pounds of bales in this thing. And it was from one window. Now, when you look in there, it's not, you don't see, you see it was straight across the other window, bales laying stacked like this, right across the fucking thing. And they did the same thing in this vehicle. They put the airbags in the springs and they inflated them. So when you put 11,500 pounds in this fucker, it wasn't sparking the highway all the way to Miami, because that's just what it would be. I mean, it would be down there. So it rode staunch and level and high, just like it was supposed to. Well, I go over to the house that, like I said, see what's going on. And Daryl goes, Timmy, come here. And I'm like, oh, fuck. And I'm thinking, exactly what he was going to ask me. He asked me, he said, dude, listen, Timmy, he says, I need somebody that I can trust to drive this Winnebago to Miami. And he said, the reason I need somebody I can trust is because it can't go to the plaza where all the other drivers are going. It has to go straight to the stash house. Now, nobody, remember, anybody in the crew, any of the crews in Southwest Florida, nobody ever met the other crew, the other side. There was always that buffer between us. It was always there for a reason. This was all part of the overall scheme of things. You don't involve as many as people as need to be. But in this case, he said, and it was true, you get within 40 foot of this fucking thing, you can smell it. So there's no way you're driving it into a plaza somewhere and parking it, I mean, that's like, why not just, put a big sign on it and weed in this fucking thing, So I said, being as who it was asking me, I relented and okay, yeah, why not? He said, I'll give you $35,000 just for taking it. It's a 120-mile trip. One way, 35 grand. He said, but I need you to stay there all day. When the load stops coming in that evening, they're going to give you a car with money in it, full of money, and I want you to drive that back to me. Hence the immense trust that needed to be engendered here. So I agreed, naturally, and here I am, and I'm the one that has to now, since we took the seats out of this fucking thing, we had to literally pull one of the bales out like this, so I could sit down in between them fuckers and drive, because there was no seats in this thing. I mean, it's bales all the way up to the dashboard, and I'm, just enough room to steer and work the pedals, right? So, okay, what the fuck? I drive this thing. I spend the day, one thing leads to another. Skipping ahead, I had met all the guys over there, and because I spent the day with them, playing poker and doing, just fucking off. And I get the money back, and it was several months after that came what they called Operation Everglades. Now that was a federally funded and federally run drug interdiction operation that involved every branch of law enforcement in these United States, including FBI, CIA, Secret Service, DEA, FBI, FDLE, which is Florida Department of Law Enforcement. There was a local sheriff's Trident task force that was involved. I mean, anybody who was a who's who. There were over 250 federal agents involved in coming down to this little town and taking it over in 1983, called Operation Everglades. Well, what they didn't understand until later on, I don't know if they ever, or maybe some of them never did figure it out, was because the intelligence was such with the first and second generations, like I said, senators, congressmen, judges. I mean, there was people on everybody's payroll. I mean, at that time, it was easy to pay somebody off. You know, even a local sheriff department or Marine Patrol, you offer a guy 10 times his annual salary to, you know, go 3 blocks down the road and go to sleep for a couple hours. What the fuck do you think he's gonna do? He's gonna go take a fucking nap, dude. But you know, anyways, they come into town. You know, they shut down the road. They got one guy. I got a picture. I got to send that to you too. They got one cop out there with a shotgun standing in the middle of the road with one of those orange cones. That was their roadblock. Because there was only one fucking road out in and out. That's all they needed. All the other were flooding the fucking 2 islands, and everybody knew they were coming 2 weeks before they got there because of the intelligence thing. There was nobody there to get, really. So they considered that one like big flop. You know, that's fuck. We fucked up, you know, like that. So almost a year to the day. Here they come again. Operation Everglades 2, they called this one. Well, the older generations by this time had enough. They knew they weren't going to stop, so they just said fuck it. So they're sitting out on their porches at 2 a.m, smoking cigarettes, waiting for the show to start. Right? And there wound up being, I can send you an article from a magazine. I'm not sure if it's a prevalent magazine in Australia or not, called Life magazine. It's a rather nationally known magazine that's been around for, God, I don't know, forever. They were just one of many reporting agencies that came to the island that morning to witness that operation. And the article page centerfold picture of the overlay of the 10,000 islands, and the 2-inch or 3-inch lettering at the top of the page across both pages says "Trouble in Everglades City" is what it read. And then underneath it, under the smaller print, it says a small southwest Florida town. They fucked up the population, but they said a small southwest Florida town tarred with drug smuggling, and most of its 600 residents say, "So what?" And it goes on for 15 fucking pages talking about a town of you know, mostly women and children and young men, because the entire male population is going to prison, right? It's just hilarious. There were more reporters on the island reporting about this story than there were people to be arrested. That's just how ridiculous it was.
Wow.
But it was successful this time around. It was pretty much successful by that time. So they had taken the characters that were visible, that they had the ability to surveil or even, you know, become suspect or something like that, which wasn't a whole lot of people. I mean, at that time, between both operations and the first and second generations of who they went after, because they had no idea the kids were doing it. I mean, they didn't have any clue to the extent to which any of this was happening until they got to the arraignment of the 5 brothers. And that's a funny one there. They wind up taking these guys in, you know, of course, obviously, you know, we take them to the federal prison. They put them in front of a federal magistrate to hear their arraignments and all this, their pleas and all this stuff. Well, long story short, with that regard, they get down to the 5 brothers who were pretty much doing all the work. They were the ones making these connections. They were the one working all of us. Because they were second generation. First generation was begun by a gentleman, a very wonderful man, just a sweetheart of a guy, and he's a legend in the Everglades, not just for pot hauling, but for his family being one of the founding families of the Everglades in Chokoloskee. His name was Loren Brown. Loren Toch Brown was his middle name. And he was just a legend, and he passed away in '96. And I was very fortunate enough to have known this man, you know. And he began blazing the trail in the early '60s of how to get Colombian marijuana to the United States, and particularly to South Florida. He was one of the first trailblazers that wound up in how to figure out how to do that. Take his crew to Panama, around the corner and up the rivers to find out whoever had the shit, because he was just winging it, man.
Wow.
Who had the grass, the lowland stuff, the redbud, how to pick it, how to dry it, how to package, trial and error. He figured the shit out.
Holy
Started
shit.
taking it to Miami for a number of years, and once the two corridors through the Caribbean to Miami, which are the windward and the leeward, the Mona and the windward passes. That's between Haiti and Cuba and Dominican Republic and the U.S. Virgin Islands are the only two ways to get out of the Caribbean, unless you come around to the eastern side and come through what we call the Gap, and that was the western edge of Cuba and the eastern side of the Yucatan to get into the Gulf of Mexico. There was only three ways to get the Caribbean into those northern waters. Well, early days coming through the Mona and the windward passes, those started getting bottlenecked by the cocaine traffickers. Yeah. The guys bringing cocaine. So now they're being more watched and they're being more under surveilled, and now by the Navy and the military and all this kind of shit. So that's when Todd says, hey, you know what, fuck this shit.
Yep.
Come over here.
Yeah.
Just come around to the Gap and bring it over to Everglades, because, once we get it over there, we own the shit, So that's how it wound up going from Miami and coming around to Southwest Florida. And what now Everglades City and Chokoloskee are known for as the hub of marijuana smuggling of North America. Wow. This is quite literally where the majority, if you were smoking weed in the 70s, 80s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, 99.9% chance that our guys had their hands on it before you did.
Yeah.
But then, like I said, there's the odd guy doing his thing here and there and this and that. But we were the only ones that were able to, and this is why it was inspiring me. One of the reasons to write the story was that we were able to, because of certain circumstances with regards to the United States government and being one of the islands within the 10,000 islands and designated as just on the edge of the boundaries of what's called the Everglades National Park. What they tried to do after they started catching a little bit of this, regulation started to change with regards to the size of nets that the commercial fishermen can use, how big the catches can be, what time of year they can catch them, how much they can catch. They started putting all these different kinds of rules and regulations on, making it difficult for us, to do what we were there, our jobs. Yeah. I mean, these people quite literally figured out how to eke out a living on a small little backwards, nowhere in the bumfuck nowhere islands and eke a living out. Yeah. You bring somebody from Sydney or Brisbane or Perth or New York or Philadelphia or Chicago, I don't care where the fuck you're from, drop you off on the road between Everglades and Miami and say, go make a living.
Yeah.
Go survive. It's not going to happen. Well, these fuckers did it. Yeah. They figured it out, and with no respect or regard for that whatsoever, other than themselves, the United States government starts imposing these restrictions.
Yeah.
Now, where are these people going to fish? You got to fish in the areas that are in the Park Service. You can't, because everything's in there. Now they want to withdraw our ability to bring our catches through the only two passes there are to get to Everglades or Chokoloskee. They want to make those national parks, so you can't bring your catch through the national park. But how in the fuck are you going to get to the fish house if you can't go to the... So they started to try that shit, and that's when everybody said, fuck you, man,
Yeah.
Then they said, okay, let me jump in with you guys and start making some money. These fuckers want to make it difficult. Yeah. That's pretty much what precipitated, everybody wanting to jump in, and that's how the town became the hub. I mean, that's why so many people became involved. Yeah. But I had to give you that little bit of backstory to help you understand what prompted Tots to begin this. And then when he started with the second generation, which they were kids at that time, was Craig and Dwayne and Daryl and Randall and Cheryl, the five brothers that you'll read about in the book. The youngest of the five brothers, Craig, was dear friends, almost best friends with Tots. Tots brought him on board, said, hey, come on, man, make some money. Yeah. Well, Craig makes a suitcase full of fucking money one time. And he takes it over to his brother's houses and he opens it up, and there's all this cash. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash in this suitcase, and his brothers are like freaking out. They're thinking, they're going to shun him. They don't want nothing to do with him. Get out of my house. We'll throw you out. They literally threw him out because in those days, the common misconception again was that you work with these people, they just soon kill you rather than pay you.
Yeah.
Well, nothing could have been further from the truth, because here's Craig, their youngest brother, with a bag full of money. And he says, okay, look, if you don't want to do that, just buy your kids some bicycles or something. I don't care. It's free. Because of their reluctance, and they saw the cash and what was taking place, one right after the other, they started taking on a job and they started working, and they became the second generation. They
Wow.
learned and they took things up a notch, and they brought their kids when they got older. They brought their kids on, which were the guys I grew up with. That's how that all took place.
Yep.
So here we are in Miami doing this thing, and I meet these people, and here come these two federal operations that wipe out the Daniels brothers and the people that are putting these jobs together and working the town. No one had ever seen the people they were dealing with in Miami, or even had a thought about, picking up where they left off and continuing.
Yep.
That wasn't even in anybody's mind until about a month after that second operation. It was probably about a month. I was living in a little town just outside of Naples, Golden Gate. I got a knock on my door, and there's this guy, George, from the house I was staying at that day. I took that Winnebago over there.
Yeah.
I wound up meeting the guys that nobody ever met. Unbeknownst to me, I
Mm.
know who the fuck these guys are. They're the ones that own the shit. They were buying it from, they were paying the older generations that were paying us kids to work that shit. Holy shit, I fell right into that fucker, man. Here's George knocking on my door. He's going, Timmy, because there's Timmy. Everybody called me Timmy. He says, Timmy, we got work to do, man. It's backing up. Can you do this? He said. And I didn't give it a second thought. I just blurted it out. Oh, hell yeah, man. Let's go to work. I had all the knowledge that was needed to work it, to take it from South America, to bring it in, to put it in Miami. I knew all of that because I had done all that over the years. What I had not done was actually gone and bought it. Who do I talk to? First of all, where do I go? What country do I go? Who do I talk to? What do I spend? How much do I pay?
Wow.
All of that shit beyond picking it up from the mothership prior to that, I knew nothing about. So I literally had to go and investigate through some of the older generation sources that had been in and done their time and got out. How the fuck do I do this?
Yep.
That's how I ultimately inherited these different connections
Wow.
that they had throughout the
Yeah.
Caribbean, through Jamaican and Colombian. Their families, they were generational, and so were we. So all I did was pick up with family where family left off. People talk about, cartels. Ooh, you fucking cartel. What fucking cartels? There was no fucking cartel. I mean,
Yep.
there was the the Medellin cartel, but that was cocaine primarily. They didn't
Yep.
give a fuck about weed,
Yeah.
and the Cali, they didn't give two shits about, cocaine or weed. They wanted cocaine. That was more profitable because they're making more money on smaller amounts to be
Yeah.
moved. When you're
Yep.
moving this much and you're making twice as much as you can make when you're moving this much, really, didn't matter to them, so
Yep.
that's why the weed was such a prevalent thing for us, dude. And the guy that I was working with in Colombia, I'll never mention his name,
Yep.
but he was cousins to the Cali cartel
Wow.
of the to the actually, they weren't part of Cali until they were the Arguella, the Arguella brothers, the Rodriguez Arguella brothers. But that was no cartel. We didn't think about cartels. There was no,
No
what
violence.
cartel?
Yeah.
Because everything today is obviously is cartel run.
Yeah.
So they're going to go ahead and obviously assume and associate that, but it wasn't that way. It was never like that. I was never afraid of it,
Yep.
because for one thing, growing up as kids and doing what the adults were showing us and telling us to do, if they weren't afraid of it, or they didn't have that look of whatever on their faces, neither did we. They
Yep.
were cool with it. We were cool with it. That's just how it all, it started for me, and that connection got made, and how I wound up just saying, okay, fuck it, let's go, let's start over. So when I went back to Everglades after seeing George that day, the infrastructure was still there. The mechanism by which it was all done was still there. They didn't get the rest of the town, particularly even the kids, because they didn't have like, who in the right minds got their kids out there unloading pot boats and shit. They were still of that, violent mentality.
Yep.
You know, that's why when they finally caught my ass, I had 15 guns stuck against my head. I'm thinking, who the fuck do they think I am, Escobar or some shit? I had my opportunity, my first chance, my first time to go to Colombia was when George introduced me to the two guys that you meet in my book, Carlito and Leo.
Yep.
They're the only two people that I'll ever mention. They were the only two people that I ever wanted to know out of Miami. You give your money to these guys. You guys give it to me. I'll talk to you. You
Yep.
talk to your people. I don't want to know them. I don't want to know fucking anybody.
Yep.
I'll give it to you, and then you do your thing with it. But it still worked the same way. You owe me, I keep.
Yep.
You pay me, you get back. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So my first trip to Colombia was a test, kind of a bit of a test run, 30,000, just over 30,000 pounds, relatively small in my eyes.
Yeah.
but it was kind of a testing for them. So that was my, I flew down there. It only takes about 5.5 hours or so to fly direct to this little dirt airstrip out in the middle of fucking nowhere land jungle. I mean, you'll read about that as well. I mean,
Yeah.
perfectly well kept airstrip to land a private business Learjet. Was owned by Carlito and Leo and I. And I
Wow.
could I could fly, because now I'm not flying 1 or 2 times a month, or or 3 or 4 times a month to buy. I'm flying down 2 to 3 times a month, and I'm buying 100 to 200,000 pounds at a time, and then sending boats to go get it. And then what I found ultimately to be the problem with all of this, and who would have ever thought that it would become a problem, was the fucking money.
Yeah.
This is what I alluded to earlier. Now we're making the same money, $175 a pound. I'll get you shit from wherever the fuck you want, because I've got a connection. I can do this.
Yeah.
And I put it on your doorstep. But I like I said, I don't want to know anybody. I get the first job, and I'm sent down to Columbia, and I meet the boss man, the boss, I call him, for the first time. So you read about this, is rather funny. So they wanted me to go down there to weigh it, to look at it, to test it, to make sure the shit out of the product I was getting was worthy, was the best I could get at that time. And Colombian Redbud at that time was about the best smoke you could get from coming out of the Caribbean during those days, barring Jamaica. Jamaica and the lion's bread. That was, I mean, every time that was a knock you off your ass. That was top shelf stuff coming out of Jamaica, because
Yeah.
those Ethiopian Zion Coptics knew what they were doing, man.
Yeah.
But the next potent type of weed was cannabis coming out of the Colombia. So that's what we were there to get. So
Yeah.
I would fly down. The first time I flew down, I took my buddy, was a Cuban friend of mine, with me to translate. We didn't see the boss that first day, because we got there that afternoon. We were put up in an apartment behind the house, which was 4 times bigger than my home here in the United States. And we had our own chef in the kitchen. We had everything we wanted, anything possible that we could have asked for, we got. And the next morning we got up, had breakfast, and we went out to meet the boss, man. He come walking through the door, and it's just a little guy, probably 5'6", nothing major about this dude.
Yeah.
Of course, jet black hair pulled back to a ponytail, and he had army fatigue pants on with big pockets, and he had a belted sidearm with him, and he had combat style boots on, but he had a
Wow.
T-shirt, and on the front of the T-shirt was the smiley face. As he's walking through the door, he's speaking Spanish, and this is buddy Rico's, translating, and my guy's translating, and he's all jovial and jolly, and he comes walking through, and he's got this smiley face, and it says, "Have a nice day," like this. And he walks past me to get a cup of tea, and I get a look at the back of his shirt, and there's that same smiley face with that smoking bullet hole in his head, and underneath of it says, "Or else." So on the front it says, "Have a nice day." On the back it says, "Or else."
Wow.
So I'm
That's
thinking,
awesome.
wow, this guy's a riot. He was just more humorous and funny than he was anything else. I mean, not serious at all. This guy.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the kind of players I was dealing with. He was just as funny, as happy-go-lucky as the Easter Bunny was yesterday. For Christ's sake, He says, "Let's go see what you're here to see," and that was the time I mentioned earlier. Was the only time I was ever handed a gun. He goes out the front door and he's yelling, "I'm driving!" He grabs a gun and off the rack, and he runs out the front door. Rico, his bar partner, he grabs a gun out the front door. Ruben, my guy, Cuban, he grabs a gun, and I said, "Fuck," and I grabbed one too, and I walk out. We get in the Jeep, or we get in the Bronco, and we drive. I don't know, it's not even 5 minutes from the house, or the mansion, I should say. This thing took up the whole side of this fucking mountain. This house, it was beautiful. The minute Rico opens this Bronco door, I mean, that smell that I was so familiar with as a kid growing up, that burlap and that marijuana smell. I mean, it smacked me and it punched me in the face like Mike Tyson, man. It's just, if they can make a cologne out of that shit, I would be their best fucking customer. That's for sure, because I love that smell. So we get out and we're walking. I'm pushing our way, these leathery fucking leaves and shit. And all of a sudden I'm looking at this pile of bales that looks like an Incan ruin. It's got 10, 12 feet high. It's 20 feet wide, and it goes at least 50, 60 feet back in the jungle. That's how big this pile is. And there's one there, and there's one alongside of it. There's another one there, and there's another one, and there's shit everywhere, man. So this was what was available throughout the region at that time because he had not just one, but he had several dozen growers from Cartagena to Barranquilla City, even as far away as Santa Marta, which is way west of Cartagena. But growers throughout that entire region growing, and simply because they grow differently.
Yeah.
Some's better than the others, and some of theirs. So by the packaging, I'm given a 6 foot long pole thereabouts, and on the end of the pole is a piece of pipe cut like a hypodermic at an angle, and I'm sticking these bales and twisting, and I'm pulling some shit out, and we're using the boss's pipe to smoke, and I'm like, damn, that's how many of those you got?
Yeah.
200 or 300. I'm kick them down, and they're kicking. The guys are kicking them off the pile,
Yeah.
and I would literally have a couple cans of paint, and I would spray my
Yeah.
particular mark that I had made on each bale. And these
Yeah.
guys are taking them and weighing them behind me as we're going along. And when I get to the amount that I'm supposed to be there to get, we went back to the house and shower up and clean up and get ready, and have dinner and get ready to fly out the next morning. Well, we get back to the house and we're showering. We're sitting in this apartment waiting to go have dinner, and they got bowls of Coke all over the fucking house, man. And the boss man is having this awesome dinner party.
Wow.
So we get cleaned up and we go back in. I'm walking in, I sit down, and I've got, being translated back and forth to and having a conversation with the big dog. And there were people in this house that I'd seen throughout the day, where we're weighing and stuff, but there was also a lot of women
Yeah.
in the house, and they were there for, any number of reasons, but just pick one, whatever your mind can think of. So we're talking, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here comes this guy that I hadn't seen yet that day. And he leans over and he whispers into the boss's ear. And I'm sitting close enough to have a conversation, and I see the look on this guy's face, and all of a sudden it turns gets ashen, like he's one of these. And then he puts his drink down, his cocktail down, and he stands up and he starts walking out of the room. And I'm watching him like this walk past me, and I almost turn around, and I see him going toward the kitchen. Now he's fast walking. I put my drink down and I turn around and I'm following this fucking guy. He gets to the kitchen. Now he's fast to walk. He gets to the doors, the French doors in the kitchen, opens up to this big, huge limestone veranda. Down these steps into the backyard, and the perimeter lights for the compound are pointing inward toward the house from the jungle.
Well.
And he runs through the yard into the jungle, past the lights, into the darkness, and dives down into the bushes. And by this time, I'm hauling ass, dude. I'm right behind this man. I don't know what's about to take place. All I know is he's running. If this guy's running, my ass is running. That's what I'm saying to myself. So I get in there, and I'm sorry, my phone keeps coming undone.
Nah, that's okay.
I get in there, and I run right past him about another 20 feet, and I dove like a swimmer off a starter's block. I fly into these bushes, and I'm sitting there, and I'm waiting for all hell to break loose, man, because I don't know what the fuck's coming right. It seemed like a goddamn hour, but it couldn't have been 30 seconds, and this guy's yelling out the back door something in Spanish. He's going like this, and I can hear this asshole. He just starts laughing like this.
Oh.
And now I'm starting to get a little pissed. I'm getting eaten by mosquitoes the size of fucking horseflies. And here's this guy's laughing. He's walking up to the house. I see his silhouette, from the dark side to the light side. I see him walking back up to the house. And I start picking this shit off of me, and I'm sweating through my goddamn clothes. And I get back into the house, into the living room, and I sit down and I get a drink. He's already there. He's already got a drink. He's sitting in his chair. He's sweating like his ass. And he looks over at me and starts laughing. And then everybody else around him starts laughing. And I'm looking around. I'm like, what in the fuck? And he says something in Spanish to Rico. And Rico says it to Ruben. Ruben says it to me. And he's the boss. He's asking me, he goes, where in the hell did you think you were going? He's asking me. I looked him right dead in the fucking eye, and I said, well, when the boss man gets up and runs out of his own fucking house, I'm following his ass. Right? The whole room breaks out laughing, But what I didn't know, and they finally figured out after he got back, was the guy that came in went into his ear. Prior to our coming there, and when he does business, such as the business we were doing, his wife and children go stay at the in-laws.
Yeah.
Till we're gone. Well, where he was, there's a little bit of a switchback on this side mountainside to get to the house. And he's got several spotters in the jungle, always somewhere around the jungle watching the roadways and this and that. Well, he gets word from this guy that your wife's on her way home. There was a car coming up that they thought was his fucking wife.
Oh
Well,
man.
it turns out wasn't his wife at all. That's what the whole joke was about. Was somebody's car looked like his wife's, but they jumped the gun, right? So
Yeah.
he was going to leave the fucking house because there's all these whores. There's this party going on. And he doesn't want his wife to know that he had any part of it. He
Yeah.
was going to leave Rico and all his buddies in there to take the blame for the party they were having for us. Right?
Oh,
He was somewhere else. So I'm thinking to myself, oh, fuck, we got to get out of here. So the next morning I get in the plane and I take off, and I ultimately I'll send a book, to come and get what I just purchased. But that was my first visit to meet the boss, and since I've been dozens and dozens of times, and we just had the greatest relationship. We could never really. He started picking up some English here and there, and shit he would say to me, and kiddingly and jokingly and stuff like that. But this is kind of nature he was.
Yeah.
He was of the same nature as I was when it came to humor. He just didn't give a shit about anything, man, because he's
awesome.
making billions of dollars and he's really
Yeah.
not having to do anything, But that was my first exposure to the boss, in Colombia. What ultimately wound up happening was, let me just say this first of all. People are going to ask, and they always do, about what do you do with your money, and people
Yes.
always think that well, you bury your money.
Yeah.
Well, no, you don't. You don't bury money for several reasons. First, I think the most important reason is because it's paper,
Yeah.
and money mildews and
Yeah.
it rots. I can't tell you, Thomas, how many times I've been paid with $10 bills, and $5 bills were the worst because nobody wanted them fucking things.
Yeah.
I mean, because if I've got a $20 million payday, I'm literally counting. We had to stop counting and start weighing because it was taking too long. My paydays were getting up into the 40 million range. And you just can't count, even with 6 federally bank reserve money machines, you can't count $40 million in a couple of days. In different denominations, because I had to take hundreds, 50s, 20s, 10s, 5s. I had to take the whole gambit. I couldn't just take one batch because some poor fucker is going to be left with an 8-car garage full of 5s. He's not going to want them fuckers,
Yeah.
Hence the 5s get moldy because they just take this bundle and pay with
Yeah.
that. Then this bundle, because it never gets open.
Yeah.
And second of all, I got some stories about some guys that have buried their shit and forgot, lost it. I'll find it again.
Man,
But
that'd be the
really
worst.
wasn't it yeah. That's it's to someone such as yourself, or someone not involved in what have been involved or seen what I've seen.
Yeah.
To them, it was like, it's simply the case of, oh, I lost my wallet. It had 200,000 in it. Oh well.
Yeah.
One of
Oh,
those things.
shit.
Oh well, just go
Yeah.
home and get some more, because it's a pain in the ass. Such a pain in the ass, quite literally, that the older generations saw fit to, and so made it very important for us to understand how to spend money, but not have anything to show for it once you've spent it.
Yeah.
There's certain things you can buy and certain things you can't buy
Yeah.
that you would need a receipt for. Say you want to buy a car.
Yeah.
You don't just go back and you started doing stupid shit like buying IROC Camaros or Porsches or, stupid shit like that just stuck out, and then you just didn't work anymore. You're done.
Wow.
You've now become a liability, and you're no longer an asset. It's just, so what they teach you is in the beginning, and there was only so many ways that they could show you how to spend money and not have anything to show for it. The biggest thing is you could spend up to $10,000. Beyond $10,000, you have to fill out what's required by everyone is what's called a CTR, a cash transaction receipt. That goes right to the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, and you declare that $10,000 of money having been spent. But if you spend $9,999, you don't need that CTR.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people that I bought trucks and cars and boats and shit from knew me, or knew us guys who we were. And if I wanted a brand new truck, and in those days they weren't that expensive, trucks, you could buy a brand new pickup truck, a Chevy or a Nissan or a Frontier, so, a Dodge or something like that for maybe 15, 20, 16, 17,000. That was a lot of money on a fucking truck.
Yeah.
Versus today, if you're talking $70,000 to buy a fucking pickup, you know what I mean? But still, you couldn't pay for it all at once. So what they would do is, I go in and take the truck and drive off with it.
Yeah.
I'd give them $9,000, and then tomorrow I'll come in and I'll give you the bail. I'll give them another $9,000. I'll give them 4,000 over what it costs us to give them some money. Here's some money on top of it just for helping out, that sort of thing. I bought that $90,000 chase boat in 9 days. I'd go in with $9,000 over the next 9 days, and or I'd give it all to them, and they would know to deposit $9,000 each day to get by that $10,000 thing. That was one way of doing it.
Well, the
and one of the
999.
best. Yeah, just get fucking rid of it. We did that one day when I was coming home from grocery shopping from Naples, because Everglades had a grocery store, but it wasn't, a huge supermarket chain kind of thing. If you want any significant type of grocery shopping, you drive 30 miles into Naples and you come home with it in a cooler. Well, I'm coming home and I passed a Chevy dealership one day, and they've got this Corvette sitting in there that's got beautiful ground effects and fat tires and mags, and it's low. It's just beautiful looking Corvette. Caught my eye enough for me to crank I was driving a Cobra, my Mustang Cobra at that time.
Wow.
I wheeled into that fucking thing, and the first thing I asked him, I said, "Is that for sale? Who owns it?" And I bought that fucker right then and there. So I'm making arrangements for the cash part up front, and I'm making arrangements for some payment on the backside, And they've got brand new ragtop Jeeps for $8,795, brand new, under $10,000. Light goes on, and as soon as Jimmy answered the phone, I said, "Dude, get Teddy, Willie, and Jimmy and Johnny. There was 6 of them, plus me. Get their asses up here, man. They got Jeeps for sale for under 10 grand." They said we could take these fuckers out, and we took them out. They all followed it. They all came up in one car. They all piled into the dealership. We bought 7 Jeeps. All of us bought a Jeep. I bought the Corvette, plus I bought a Jeep, because they all bought one too.
Wow.
We took them from there. We left our cars parked at the dealership. We went from there to a place south of here called Bad Luck Prairie out in the Everglades. And we had one of the most badass demolition derbies, dude, you've ever seen in your life. We wrecked these, smashed and crashed these, rolled these fucking things for the whole afternoon until we had one left that was in decent enough shape to drive back into town and pull it into the park in our cars and drive home. And I wrecked the one I was in, just totaled it, because my girlfriend at the time, if you're reading about her, Lori, blonde bartender, she was just like she didn't have a brain one. She acted like that. She's really very clever girl, but in some areas she's just dumb as a post, right? And she sees we're in the Jeep, and there's a roll bar.
Yeah.
And she's thinking, well, there's a roll bar, you must be able to roll the fucking thing. So she's screaming for like a half hour. She's screaming, "Roll it, roll it." She's got her hands up on the straps in the window, and she's screaming, "Roll it." I'm tired of hearing this bitch. And all of a sudden I just cranked the fucking wheel like that, and boom, boom, boom. I rolled this thing probably 3 times. I don't know. I lost count. And it's upside down, and we're hanging from the straps, and she's crying, "Why did you do that?" And I'm spitting sand out of my mouth. I got it up under my eyelids and shit like this, and she's screaming again, "Tim, why the hell did you do that?" And I looked over and I said, "Because you fucking told me to." That was negligible spending. Fuck, 9 grand. We spend more than that in the bar on the weekends.
Wow.
And speaking of that was one of the easiest ways to spend a lot of money at one time. We could literally go to Miami and spend a 4-day weekend. Me and 4 of my buddies, we would take an average of a couple $100,000 a piece, in hundreds, because they're the smallest. A couple $100,000 of hundreds is a stack about like this. You can carry that. What I was carrying for a wallet was a shaving kit with a zipper on. That was my wallet, because I had bundles of cash. And so each of us would take a couple $100 grand to Miami on a Friday and spend through Monday evening, sometimes Tuesday, and spend the weekend going from Miami to South Beach, going into the clubs at night and taking the tab on for the club. Find the manager. Most of the managers knew us. We'd take the tab, just say, "Okay, free drinks for everybody from now until we leave." And I'd give them a pile of cash. Just let me know what it is and we cash out,
Yeah.
and, hold on to this stack in the meantime, because he knew we were serious. They knew where we were from.
Yeah.
Most of the guys in Miami's knew us that way. And next thing you know, everybody in the bar is drinking. I don't care what you're drinking, champagne, top shelf. I don't give a fuck what it is. Spend it, drink it, because you're only talking about $3 a drink, even in those days,
Yeah.
two something or other. It takes a lot of fucking drink. I mean, it takes a lot of drinks
Yeah.
to spend a couple
100,000.
hundred
Yeah.
grand. But when you've got 600 people in one of these giant Miami clubs, we go from one club to the next. We couldn't spend it all to this one. We just go down the street and hop into this club and then throw a wad in there until. And our sole intention over those 4 days, with $1 million between all of us, was to have enough gas money to get home. That was our goal.
Wow. Yeah.
And that sort of spending was easy enough to do. That's what that kind of thing, or go
Yeah.
on a vacation somewhere to
That's pretty
to
cool.
somewhere that you've never been, and
Yeah.
just piss money away. I mean, just piss it away. Buy shit for people, and I can't tell you how many cars or trucks I bought for people. And I was going into town to a club one night with a buddy of mine in his pickup truck, and I said, "There's no fucking way I'm showing up in this thing, man. Pull in over here." So we pull into a buddy of mine's dealership, and I said, "Pick out a truck." He picked out a brand new truck, and we were in there 15 minutes driving off with it because they knew I'd be back. I'm good for it. So we
Wow.
show up with a brand new truck, and he, if I had back the money I gave away, I'd be a multi-millionaire.
Wow.
But I don't care about all of that. It was just what we knew. It was just how we grew up. It was just how we were taught, and the hand we were dealt as 20-year-olds. Who in their right mind, who's what 20-year-old makes $150,000 a week? And
That's
when I
nuts.
started taking on the jobs myself, my pay went from that to literally millions a week. I do one job, I'd make $1.5 million,
Yeah.
for a couple hours work, or a flight to Colombia and back. Where the problem was, Thomas, where the problem really was in getting paid. Like I started to say earlier, if I'm getting paid 20 million, or it's taken 2 weeks or so to get paid for one particular job, and I may have, when it comes time to get paid for that one, I may have another one ready to get paid for.
Yeah.
Or another one, and I've got $40 million I've got to go count out. Of course, it's been pre-counted when it's being bought in smaller sums, like hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time or whatever, when people are buying it from the Cubans like that. It's been already money counted then, so we know each bundle is correct, with the amount it's supposed to be in it. But what we had to figure out from at one point was, I'm counting money for 3 and 4 days at a time now, when I should be in Colombia, or I should be in Jamaica, or I should be helping my crew unload, or some shit like that. I'm getting bogged down counting fucking money. So we decided to quit counting it, start weighing it instead.
Wow. It's a good problem
And
to have.
I was weighing literally thousands of pounds of money. $40 million. I can't even describe to you what $40 million looks like. I can tell you that we figured out, as a matter of course, like a lot of people did in those days, is that every dollar bill, regardless of the denomination, every United States bill weighs a gram. Well, there's 28 grams in an ounce. There's 16 of those in a pound. It's just math beyond that point.
Yeah.
So all we had to do was pay attention to the denominations of bills that were being thrown onto this basket on the scale.
Wow.
And there were guys literally going from the master bedroom from the guest room. There were hundreds in one room, 50s in one room, 20s in one, 10s in another. 8-car to 10-car garage out back has all the fives in it, because $1 million in five would fill this room behind me. That's how much $1 million in fives takes up.
Holy
Plus,
shit.
now that we're weighing it, on the average, 22 pounds in $100 bills is $1 million, just for instance.
Yeah.
Anybody can Google this shit and find out now. I mean, it's just common knowledge. The United States Treasury tells you as much. They tell you what their shit weighs. We just figured it out back then, because when people are doing blow, they throw that $100 bill or that 20 on the scale, and it would weigh a gram. So that's, it's a gram. That's just how they figured it out. So 110 pounds in 20s is $1 million. 240 pounds of 10s is $1 million. It exponentially goes like that.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about $40 million or so, you're literally talking
So,
about a couple tons of money, quite literally. Now what's taking me 4 days to count, it's taking me one afternoon, just bring it out of the bedroom in laundry baskets. And for the first go round, all I had to do was count how many bundles of hundreds, 20s, 10s, or whatever it is that it took the scale to get to 100 pounds. But I only had to count them the one time because I had to know how many rubber bands I was throwing in there, because the rubber bands weigh a gram each. There's
yeah.
2 on a bundle. So I have to subtract the amount of the rubber bands in order to get the weight to tell me what the correct weight is. So
Exact
just
number.
over 110 pounds, including the weight of the rubber bands, there's my $1 million. Dump it out. Throw some more in there. Look at the scale. Dump it out. There's 2 million. It's just like that. It was just, now I'm
Yeah.
in another afternoon. But to be honest with you, and this is surprising to a lot of people, it always took me more time to get the money home than it did to get the 40 tons of weed to Miami,
Yeah.
because I couldn't take 40, try to take, $40 million, dude, is a hefty pile of cash,
Yeah. That's
And
nuts,
like I
man.
said, literally tons of money, tons it weighed. And you just don't put all that in one car and bring it home.
Yeah.
You don't put it all in one truck and bring it home. You never put all your eggs in one fucking basket, dude. You fill a car that can take, a couple, 3 million, 4 million at a time, and you start making trips, with the money. The
Yeah.
money was more of a pain in the ass to get home than the pot was to get the money. If you can believe that shit, what a problem they
That's
have, right?
crazy, man.
Plus, I have so much of it that
Yeah.
I've got, I'm throwing it in my attic and shit, trying to figure out where to put this stuff. I'm buying new houses because I had to buy a house straight out of the condo that I was living in, because there was so much money stuffed in the air conditioning ducts. The air wasn't coming out anymore. So I had to buy another house so I could have air conditioning. I would throw that shit in the attic, a couple 100,000, $500,000 or so. I was stacking in boxes up there, and I opened the attic up, and I noticed this little pile right in front of me. And it was, I don't know, it was a pretty good sized pile, like this.
Yeah.
All $100 bills chewed up in confetti sized
Oh.
pieces by mice. $250,000, $250,000 in $100 bills was just literally chewed to the shit, to the
Oh.
point where, you're not putting this shit back together with tape, because these little fuckers were thorough, man. They had the coolest little
Oh.
condominium, and all I could do was laugh. I'm laughing. This fucking shit. I had to call my girlfriend, Lori, come here, look at this. I just grabbed it like this and threw it back in the back of the attic with the rest of the insulation, and threw my boxes in there and told Lori, we got to call a fucking pest control or somebody, get these mice out of here. But
Shit.
that was just, one of 5 houses that I owned at that time. I had several around the Caribbean. That one I got, and I might have wrote this in the book. I tell so many. There's so much to tell that I couldn't write it all in the book. That's why I do things with guys such as yourself, and you do an awesome job. By the way, you're just a blast to watch the goofy shit that you do, man.
Thanks.
I'm surprised you don't have more subscribers than you do.
Yeah.
People tell your boys and girls about this guy, man. He's
Yeah.
hilarious.
Thanks.
That was just part of. Yeah, no worries, dude. It's just the way we grew up. This is all we knew as kids, and when I started writing about this, they're like, who would want to hear about this shit, man? I think, you'd be surprised, well,
It's awesome.
here my book is 8 years later in its second printing, when it's still selling as fast as they can print the goddamn thing. Simply because of the nature of the story, which is cannabis and marijuana, the history of it here in the United States, a story of actually how it began and how it ended, how it began coming into the United States, and quite literally when it ended. And it ended in 1989 and 1990. Those were the years that I finally got taken out of the picture. And the other 5 crews working in Southwest Florida, when they started taking me and the first 38 of us, that first day, I'll send you some pictures of that front page of that newspaper that day. It said area part of a U.S. pot dragnet, they called it.
Yeah.
And the subtitle of the articles read, agents say 38 helped import over 150 tons. They had done what was called in 1988 Operation Peacemaker. It was the third of 3 federal operations, 2 of which I told you about earlier.
Yep.
That involved 250 plus federal agents from every branch of law enforcement across the United States. They did it again. They did 250 plus agents from every branch. This time they would call it Operation Peacemaker. They were coming after the third generation that they didn't know existed, because when they got the first two generations, they thought they stopped it.
Shit.
Well, no, all they did was allow the next generation to come up and make things a little more sophisticated.
Yeah.
You know, and when I say that, I mean, I had time, one of the guys on our crew in Everglades, father was one of the only two sheriff deputies in town. He was on the crew. Well,
Wow.
I was keeping most of our money stash at the fucking mayor's house at the same time. I've got an Everglades National Park ranger on the payroll. He's introducing me to one of the premier counter surveillance technology experts at the time in Miami, who the government was buying their equipment from. He introduced me to this guy, so I'm buying the same, if not better, equipment than the government's buying. Spend more money than they can, you know, even though they're spending billions. I've got handheld radar. I've got radio frequency RF, personal RF detector I can carry around in my pocket. It was the size of a deck of cards, playing cards. And it had two types of antenna on it. It had a telescopic that you could pull out like this, like a regular antenna. You could unscrew that one, and you could screw another one on it that was just a wire. So I could tell if they were recording or if they were sending a frequency outside. And then the more it vibrated, the closer I could get to them. So I could be standing right next to this thing going off and jerking me off in my own pocket, and I know the guy standing next to me is the one with the radio. I know not to talk to that fucking guy. It's just stuff like that.
That's nuts.
And when I got home, I could take that wire off and put the antenna on, pull it out. Now I can sweep my home for any other for any surveillance technology that they may have put in my home while I was gone. Just cool shit like that. And Polaris scanners that would scan a 360 degree with a light emitting, with an LED light emitting diode. It would swing in a compass fashion like this. And if somebody keyed their mic, they didn't have to talk on the radio, the marine radio. They just go like that. This thing would stop. It would show you the direction in which that key on that mic came. So you didn't have to talk on the radio. You just key your mic and people would know where you were. That's how we communicated back and forth at night when we're coming in. You don't talk. You just, if you were out of sight of the other boat running with you or other two boats running with you, because you're running dark and you want to know how close they are, if you got your radar on 50 miles, you're not going to see a blip, really, really close to you. You got to shrink it down. And then you hear back and it'll show you, oh, okay, they're over there.
That's
so
crazy.
We know right where people are at. And parabolic microphones. Those were the coolest things, because you had a set of headphones you put on, and those are the things that you see at the side of a rugby game or a football game, where it looks like a television disc, a dish with a microphone in it, and it's picking up everything those players are whispering on the field. It's everything they're saying. Well, we are having the same technology whereby the guys are sitting on the shoreline waiting for us to come in with our boat. They can aim this thing up and down the shoreline, and for the next 3-4 miles, if somebody's in the bushes and they fart, they can hear it. There's somebody over there.
Holy shit.
Just cool stuff like that, and just the connections that we had made it easier for us. And we also, the older generations like to use, whatever boats, shallow drafting boats were available, and they use a lot of what were called mullet skiffs that use they do a lot of backwater net fishing for the bait that the crabbers used, to catch their stone crabs with. Shallow drafting boats to get through the islands, and making it into those bays and those back bays where nobody could really ever get. We were using the type of, and building boats called a T-craft that had a wide, shallow drafting, only had a center console in it. It was all deck and boat. You could get probably 30, 40 bales on one of these at a time and go through water that had the motors had a vertical and a horizontal trim, meaning the prop would either go up or down, or it would swing in and out like you trim a boat like this, or it would go up and down. You pull that prop up to where it just meets the bottom of the boat. As long as that prop will go through the water, that boat's going to go through the water. You got a 6-inch prop, that boat's going through 6 inches of water, and nobody's following you because there's nobody going through 6 inches of water because of the design of the boat. Well, there were hundreds of these boats in Southwest Florida because these were the preferred method of bringing inshore to the shallows. And there were a lot of them, majority of them are stored in garages and barns and places out of sight because cops aren't stupid.
Yeah.
You start seeing all these different kinds of boats. They're going to figure it out. That's why you're not ever so stupid enough to be obvious. We're always one step ahead of them when it comes to that. But what that did for us as well is when I stepped up, and I say I took over, and I don't like to use that term because I didn't do this on my own, man. It took hundreds of other people to make the shit that I talk about happen. So I can't take all the pat on the back for it.
Yeah.
I can take the pat on the back for setting it up and providing them the means by which to make all that money. But without them, this whole thing I was nobody. I would have been a nobody. But I have to say that. I have to get that out there because mad props to everybody and anybody I ever worked with, because they were just like, I mean, how does a small town of just under 500 people keep that secret for 30 years?
Yeah.
I mean, it takes some incredible doing and a lot of respect for one another to do something such as that.
It's pretty cool.
That's why I, out of respect, didn't want to just arbitrarily name names, because of the respect that I earned and they had earned, along the way throughout our lives, doing something that, seems at times a lot throughout the book when you read it really jovial, and there was a lot of fun. I mean, it was a fucking riot. I'd do it again if I had a chance to do it all over. I'd do it again, man.
Wow.
But at the same sense, it was actually really quite serious. I mean, these fuckers they weren't playing. The law wasn't playing games, man. They were serious as hell about what it is they were out there and getting paid to do. That the United States government was literally spending billions of dollars to stop what we were doing. And at that time, you could hear on the news at night when the evening news would come on, they would talk about, the success of drug smuggling and drug importations are down by 30% or, whatever. And we're looking at one another going, where the fuck are you coming up with this number, man? Because from where we're sitting, where are you fucking people,
Business is booming.
Our estimate in those days, was for every 1 pound that they caught, more than 100 got through. So, I mean, dude, you're not making any dent at all. I mean, if you think you are, God bless you in your way of thinking, and good luck with that. But you were so sorry for wrong. And this is what they didn't understand about the whole thing until Operation Peacemaker came about. They started taking us, the first 38 that day, and then blaming 150 plus tons, nearly 400,000 pounds on me, which after 3 weeks of doing this investigating and arresting people, they found out that was only about a week's work. That was a big joke on them. Because we're moving 55 tons in one night, dude. Figure it out. Do the math. I mean, I figured just in a rough estimate that 28 nights to 1.6 million pounds. That was just a rough estimate in 28 nights that went across that little island, man. And then some of the shore crews, when we weren't working Everglades, there was a crew in the Goodlet Island, Marco Island, Naples, and Fort Myers and Pine Island. There were 5 crews working all the time. I mean, the shit was just, they were boats parked out here like it was a fucking parking lot, man. And I'm not exaggerating. This is just how it was in the 80s here in the States. Caribbean weed, if you wanted to smoke weed at all here in the United States during those times, you literally had to take a boat somewhere, load that fucker full of shit and bring it back. That's how it had to happen. And this is what I'm telling you. This is how it happened. And as ridiculous and outrageous as it sounds, and I get it, man, you're going to get a lot of comment on your shit about this, and I can hear it now. Haters, go ahead and hate me. Go ahead and, I don't care. But if you bother, I respect anybody's opinion. I don't care who you are. It's your opinion. I respect that. But I only respect it in as far as you've done your fucking homework on me. Look me up on the internet. Look me up in all my shit that I've been involved in. All the, my book wasn't published surely on its own merit. I had to validate what I was talking about. And when the publisher of St. Martin's Press got on herself on a phone call with me and asked me, the only question she had to ask me was about validating all this ridiculousness that I'm talking about. The sheer volume of weed and the sheer volume of money we're talking about going through this little speck of a town of an island in Southwest Florida. What is your validation? And I said, well, okay, Who would you like me to introduce you to? CIA, DEA, FBI, FDLE. You name them, I'll introduce you to the superintendent. She went, perfect. That's all I need. So even in my book, I give props to a guy named David Waller, who was the gentleman you'll read about when everything came to a head at the end on Pine Island, and we're coming to that here shortly. He was the resident field agent and lead agent for Operation Peacemaker. That was the operation they called upon to take care of me and my crew, all 5 of them. He was the lead guy. He was involved in. We became dear friends even after the fact. About 9 years ago, he kind of found me out of the blue.
Really?
Every year it seemed that every year it seemed that the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the FDLE, would get together and have a conference here and a kind of a reminisce about the old days and things that they got in some of the bigger projects and operations that they got involved with here in Fort Myers. And every year my name is one of the topics of conversation that everybody's having. So excuse me, he decides to go ahead and try to look me up, found me through an email, and didn't start out by saying introducing himself or anything like this. He just said, hey Timmy, he says, looks like you're doing well. It's good to see you're doing well, and if you'd like to have any if you need any help with speaking engagements or anything like this, I'd be glad to help you out. Now this was prior to the publication of my book or anything.
Wow.
I was still kind of process of kind of quasi writing. And I'm thinking, like, who the hell is this? So I scroll this email all the way to the bottom. And it said David R. Waller, United Federal Department of Law Enforcement. I'm like, oh fucking shit. So I answer back right away and I go, you wouldn't happen to be the agent that arrested me, would you? And then 30 seconds didn't go by and I get an answer back, yep, that was me.
Holy
So I'm thinking, holy shit, man, this is fucking wild. We just start talking back and forth, and we just became the dearest of friends. And he's agreed. We were working on a project together for Amazon Prime. We were working on an 8-episode mini docuseries, and unfortunately, and God bless his soul, David passed away last November. And that kind of went down the tubes with that. But I was more sad for David than I was for the loss of the video. Because somebody will pick me up. I don't know, somewhere along the line. I've done so many. I did one for Viceland video, and they put only a 9-minute, 38-second clip of it online. And Viceland Australia, it got almost 13 million views in Australia alone. Just that one clip. And you can find it online if you Google my name, Tim McBride /Everglades. Everything about me will come up. So that's why I said, if you want to do your homework on me before you comment on any of my shit, do some homework, and then I'll respect what it is you have to say. But until then, you can go on thinking this, ridiculousness of it yourself, because I don't blame you. First time I said 20 tons to somebody, I lost them, man. They can't wrap their mind around that. So quite simply, Thomas, what wound up happening was, the work was so prevalent. There was so much going on, and the U.S. government obviously realized that they'd cut the head off the snake, but the body of the snake was still working. The infrastructure was still there. We continued on. It took them several years to kind of figure this back out again, but nevertheless, what wound up happening during that time was that the first and second generations, as they were getting their just due by the United States government and getting nabbed and no one ever actually got caught on a load of shit. It was all a conspiracy mostly. Some stuff was seized, but no one was ever caught and captured. When they took the original 5 brothers, the Daniels brothers, the second generations of us, I told you earlier, when they had gotten arrested and they were taken in. Now they're standing in front of a federal magistrate in Miami being sentenced. 5 brothers. Now, Craig, the youngest of the 5 brothers, had been busted before. He had done federal time before, so this was his second time. The judge made him aware of that, made sure that he understood that. Well, the judge is going over their list of seizures. These 5 brothers, they've got a Netherlands Antilles holding company worth about $8 million, untold number of properties throughout the Caribbean. Here in the States, they've got houses, cars, planes, airplanes, timeshares, hotels, motels, land here, land there, all over as far as Kentucky, which is in the middle of the United States. And on top of that, they seized $14 million, plus they seized 580,000 pounds of Colombian marijuana.
Holy shit.
Dude, who in the fuck has 500,000 pounds of weed laying around? Well, we do. These guys do. So the judge is reading this shit off, right? And he quite literally, and I'm reading the transcripts from Craig's, Craig's happening. Plus, he's telling me at the same time as I'm writing, I want to write this for the book.
Yeah.
He says the judge, he's literally scratching his fucking head. He's going through papers like this. He takes his glasses off and he looks at all of us. And he looks us dead in the eye and he says, gentlemen, I have literally no idea how to sentence somebody like you. He says, I have never quite, in all my years of being a magistrate, have I ever come across people such as yourself. He said, there are no guidelines for people like you. So he was at a loss. But he turns to Craig and says, now, Mr. Daniels, Craig, he says, I have to remind you again, sir, that this is your second time.
Yeah.
I have to take that in consideration. Oh, yes, sir, I understand. Craig's going, yeah. Well, the judge is, flipping through his papers again. He looks up at the other four brothers and says, 36 months in prison, federal prison.
Holy
36 months. 2.5 fucking years. Because, that's all he could do. There was nothing beyond that point. He used a little bit of judge's discretionary measures, which they had at that time regarding, they'd never been busted, they'd never been in trouble, they all have families, they all work hard, all that kind of shit, went into play. But holy Christ, 36 months. So now the judge, it's almost a joke. The judge looks over at Craig and goes, now, remember, Mr. Daniels, this is your second time. He says, and once again, and let me stress, and I can't stress it enough, he says, I absolutely have no idea what to do with somebody like you. He says, then he looks at him and again, and he's serious as shit. He looks at Craig and he goes, Mr. Daniels, does 5 years sound like a long time to you? He's asking. And Craig looks at him and goes, oh, hell yes, sir. That sounds like a hell of a long time. He goes, 5 years. He gives Craig 5 years. He's out in less than 3, right?
Wow.
Because of the laws the way they are. They give you good time. They give you statutory good time. All this shit clicks. Okay, so they go, they do their thing, and I step up. I'm, and here we are back to me again. I get in, I rested with that 150 plus tons, and, right away they want cooperation out of you. They want to know who you're dealing with, who you're fucking with in Miami. Well, that wasn't happening. Quite literally, because even though it was done in such a non-violent fashion, and of course they could not have known this. There's no way they could have known this. Maybe if they'd have taken a little more time when they're investigating, but what it came down to, it wasn't a matter of any brilliant works, anything like this. They got one of our guys, squeezed his ass and made him give us up, was what fucking happened. Now, when my crew's not working, I don't give a fuck what they're doing. This guy, in particular, I'm not going to name any names, of course, but he was in Colombia fucking around with cocaine, and he gets thrown in a Colombian prison. He's part of our crew. Well, the United States government gets wind of him. They know he's in prison, so they go down there and say, look, we'll get you out of this fucking hellhole. Here's what we need you to do for us. So that's how it started. None of us knew he was in Colombia fucking around because, like I said, nobody gives a shit when anybody else does on their own time. I don't care what the fuck you do. When you're ready and it's time to work, they're expected to fucking show up because you've been prepaid. You've been in advance this. So they bring him back and put him right back to fucking work on one of our chase boats. Now, I explained to you what a chase boat does. It goes offshore with a load boat, follows that load boat back in. So this particular guy was in on this one job right from the very beginning. 57,000 pounds is what I set up. And I arranged to have it taken to 2 different places for 2 different crews to work. One crew went to Everglades City. That's where I grew up. That's the guys that I grew up with. I knew they could handle their shit on their own. I hadn't worked all that often or very much with the Pine Island crew, so I went up there to be with that half of the work. The chase boat on that crew up there was this guy that the feds had already had in their pocket. So they had been watching me. They followed me to Key West when I'm looking for boats, and all this kind of shit. They knew everything. They knew what the fuck was going on right from the very beginning. So that night, this is October 9th on a Tuesday, I remember,
Yeah.
We're up in Pine Island, and if you understand the geography of the area, and I encourage you to, look at Southwest Florida and all the little islands that make up the barrier islands and stuff on the coast.
Yeah.
You'll understand how this could have been done. In the fashion in which it was done. Well, the Pine Island crew had taken us from a motel, and I had noticed for some reason a tan Bronco that looked like, and even commented out loud that no, these Yankees are lost, man. They don't know where they're going because they're driving all around this parking lot at this
Oh,
motel. We just thought they didn't know what the fuck they were doing.
yeah.
So later on, as we're out, we're out in bumfuck into nowhere land on this island where nobody has any business being. There's an old, grown-up roadway of sorts to a dock that's all broken down on this backwater. That's where we backed our big box truck into, and we're going to load this box truck at this dock. So we're back
Yeah.
there and we're waiting, and it comes time, and the boats start to show up, and there's some little bit of chatter, radios back and forth kind of stuff, and then we start throwing. We get, I don't know how many boats show up. We get probably 100, 150 pieces onto this truck, and all of a sudden the boats stop showing up,
Oh,
just quit showing up. Nobody's talking on the radio anymore, and it's just dead silence. And I'm thinking, man, this is fucking weird. Well, the guy out, a spotter out by the road for me, he says, Timmy, he gets on the radio. He says, Timmy, a car just pulled in here with its lights on, backed up and pulled off and went back on down the road again. And right away, the hair starts standing up on the back of my neck. I'm thinking,
oh,
oh, this ain't right, man. There should be nobody out here.
yeah.
I mean, that guy's got no business being out here, especially where he turned around at. I walk my way up through the woods up to where he's at, and I said, okay, start telling me again, what the fuck, man? So I look behind me, and everybody that was back at the dock in the truck where I was at was now behind me because they know some shit's wrong. He starts telling me about this car, and now I can hear. I mean,
Oh,
you can't see them, but you can hear them. It's like 20 cars, the tire noise
yeah.
coming down the road, and it's dark. It's like 4 in the
Yeah.
morning. And holy shit, guys start taking off running, right? And if you run this way, there's a pine tree forest. You
Yeah.
run this way, and there's a what we call palmetto bush, which is a bit of a palm tree, but they don't grow any taller than about 4 feet tall. They're like a bush, 2 acres of it. So you run into trees, you're home free, man. You run this way, you're screwed. I mean, you're not going anywhere. Well, it just happened so quickly. As soon as I saw the lights of the cars in the street out front, I didn't even see the car yet. I saw the headlights.
Well,
Boom, guys take off like cockroaches when you turn the lights on. My dumb ass doesn't run toward the fucking trees. I take off for some reason. I'm running this way. I'm in the palmettos. I don't get 15 steps, dude. And there's that car. Boom, down I go. I'm high. I'm ducked
damn.
down. I'm tucked down. I'm underneath 4 feet of fucking bushes. That's it.
Holy
I
shit.
didn't get from here to, you see that wall behind me? I
Yeah.
didn't get that far away. That first car pulled in, which what was it? I could see under the branches as the door
Okay.
opened up on this tan Bronco, the one that was at that fucking
Damn.
mall or that motel we were staying at.
You called it.
And I could see that I was so close, dude. When the interior light came on and he stepped out, I could see his boots on the ground. That's how close I was. And I could hear all this. There's guys running over there. There's some more guys running down there. I mean, there's people
Yeah.
running and going at cars squealing and shit was going on, man. I mean, hell was breaking loose, right? And I am 15. I could spit and hit this guy with my spit. That's how close I was. And I'm thinking, holy shit, I'm right in the middle of this fucking shit. Well, what typically happens is not uncommon for, we would get a passenger from Colombia or where they might be from that would just hitch a ride with a boat, an illegal, and he would just take off when the crew came in.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get to the state. Well, this Colombian guy was on board. He came on. He started running the same way I did. Only he didn't stop. He's crunch, 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 crunch through this fucking shit. This guy gets out of the fucking vehicle, and I'm thinking, dude, stop fucking running, man. Because if this guy takes off after you, he's
Yeah.
gonna trip the fuck right over me on his way to you. And then
Oh
all of a sudden
shit.
he stopped. And I'm thinking, oh, thank God, you fucker. He stopped running or he got out of him or whatever the fuck. So here I am still stuck listening to the operation going down. And the guy in the Bronco takes off. He backs out and he goes. Now it's about 4:35ish. It's gonna get light in the next 20 minutes or so. And if the sun comes up, I'm fucked, dude. There I'm sitting right there. I might as well just wave at him and give up, right? So when he takes off, I hear another car pull up out front in the road because I'm at the corner. I'm at the main road out front. I'm at this piece of shit driveway. I'm right here.
Yeah.
And I could hear the car running. And the Bronco comes back and he steps out. The guy steps out. This is David Waller, the guy I was talking to you about, the agent who I did the video with
Yep.
of Prime. He was the guy in the Bronco.
Wow.
And so the guy in the car, when he shuts the Bronco door, the guy in the car goes, "Hey, what's up?" David yells, he says, "Dude, I'm going to go back in there and see what we got." And the guy in the car yells back at him. He says, "Hang on a second. I'll walk back in there with you." And I'm thinking, "Oh shit, this is my chance, dude." And they go trucking back into the woods together. And I give them a good couple minutes to make sure they get back their ways. But the car in the street is still running. And I'm thinking, if there's somebody in that fucking car, and I lift my head up over these bushes to look, whoever's in there is going to see me, man.
Yeah.
One of two things is going to happen. One, I'm either going to have to tackle and beat the schnot and fucking knock this fucking guy out, or two, he's going to shoot me while I'm running. And I said, now the sun's up. I got no choice. I look up over them fucking bushes and there's nobody in that car, dude. I took off running like a shot, man. I ran across the road and I'm in the trees and the bushes and I ran till I couldn't breathe. I mean, I don't know how far I ran. I dove under a pile of fucking brush in these trees and I laid there waiting for the sound of people running behind me, thinking maybe somebody had to see my ass. I mean, there was hundreds of guys that sounded like out there. Somebody had to see me. Well, nobody was running. Nobody came after me. And I lay there all fucking day and listened to the helicopters flying over. And I listened to them pulling my box truck out of the woods, banging through the branches and shit. And, all this stuff going on. And it gets to be evening time. And, I'm laying there and I'm still all covered up, and I heard this crackling noises like footsteps. And I opened my eyes and I kind of looked sideways like this. And there's a fucking bobcat. Now, this thing had to weigh 80 pounds. If it weighed a pound, it was a big fucker. Yeah. And it was like doing one of these, was taking steps and was sneaking up on me like this because it could see my eyes moving, but it couldn't tell what the fuck was going on. And I'm laying there thinking, God damn it, now I'm getting pissed. And I'm thinking, dude, I just spent the night and this whole day running away from the law, trying not to get nabbed, and now I'm going to get eaten by this fucking thing. And I said, nah, my inner monologue's going like this, and I'm telling myself, there's no fucking way. So I didn't even think about it. I just went, rah, like that, and I threw the branches and the leaves in the air, and I screamed as loud as I could. That fucking thing jumped 3 feet in the air. It flipped probably 4 times while it was doing that. When it hit the ground, it took off into the trees like it was shot out of a cannon. I scared the piss out of this thing. And then now it was dark. It was time for me to start walking my ass and to figure out how the fuck I'm going to get out of there, because this is the next night now. I'm now 24 hours have gone by. I'm hanging out in the fucking woods. Yeah. So I do remember 3 miles or so down the road was a fish house that I could, maybe sneak up on and see what the fuck. Well, it's 2:30 in the morning, and I get to this fish house, and there's lights are still on inside. There's somebody in there, and the lights are on in the parking lot. And I'm standing off into the bushes, out of the light, and I see, this is before cell phones, and I see a phone box in the parking lot, but there's lights on. All the parking lots lit up like a goddamn infield at the 50-yard line. And I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to get down there to this phone without somebody thinking, who's this fucking guy out there coming out of nowhere, So as I'm thinking about what the fuck I'm going to do, these 2 shrimp boats pull in and dock, offload their catch. This all takes about an hour and a half, and I'm still sitting there trying to figure out what the fuck. So the crew from the boats line up at the phone to call for their rides home. So I'm thinking, bingo. I just kind of strolled down there out of the room and got in line with the rest of the fucking guys. When it got to my turn, I opened the book up to taxis, to the T's and the A's, and the first one I saw, I called. Yeah. And I promised that fucking guy $600. I said, I'll give you $600 cash. Come and get my ass right now. I don't care. It's, 3 and 4 in the morning, whatever fucking time it was. He said, and plus I'll give you your fare. Yeah. Just get me out of here. I'm tired of been fishing. I want to go home. He says, you're not kidding me about that money, right? And I said, no, you show up like that. And while I'm talking to him, this sheriff's car pulls in the parking lot real slow. He's eyeballing everybody. And he pulls in, he goes around, he circles around behind me. And I'm kind of talking and looking like this. And he goes out another entrance over here and back down the road and takes off. And I'm thinking, dude, just get your ass here, man. I got to go home. I hung up photo. 40 minutes later, he pulls in. I threw $600 bills in his fucking lap, and I climbed in the back seat and I scrunched down. And I said, "Get the fuck out of here. Get me to Punta Gorda to the first hotel you'll find, and I'll be good."
Yo,
That's how I got out of there.
holy shit.
But then it wasn't much longer after that come the investigation,
Yo,
about people and stuff, because we were at that motel. They saw the vehicle we were in. We were in Mark's van,
yeah,
Clark's fucking van with his brother-in-law who ran the fish house. They were helping me out on that end. Well, when we all took off running, of course they knew that the van was still parked at that motel, that somebody would eventually be back for it.
yo,
Well, Clark and his brother-in-law go back there and go to get in the thing, and they stop DEA questions them, identifies himself and questions and this, and then they don't know nothing. We don't know because they didn't catch anybody there.
yo.
Everybody took off. Nobody was caught red-handed. All they
Oh,
got was the ship that was on the shoreline. They didn't catch not one soul,
holy
so they
shit.
couldn't keep them. They couldn't detain them.
Yeah.
But what they did was they searched through the van. In the back of the van, guess what they found? My fucking checkbook, my wallet.
Oh,
At the back of the van. Investigation comes around, and David Waller, the guy I'm talking about, much younger, obviously,
yo,
and really, obviously, very proud, of himself, and being the man he was. He was hot shit. He was that. He had that investigator kind of smugness to him.
yo,
I'm the bad guy. You're the good. You're the good guy kind of thing.
yo,
And he says, "We found your wallet in the back of this van that was at the scene of this, thing at Pine Island, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Yeah, so what?" I said, "Mark and I have been friends since we were kids." I said, "I could have left my wallet or whatever it was in his van. I don't know how I got there." They weren't buying that shit, man. So, investigation continued. One thing led to another. And, I wound up being the subject of that front page of that newspaper that so during the course of that, what wound up happening was, because there had been a change in the federal sentencing guidelines from one year to the next. A year prior, September 1st, 1987, the United States government changed their federal sentencing guidelines to what's called mandatory minimums, meaning now that regardless of the crime you get involved in under the federal jurisdiction, there are no more paroles. You are mandatorily sentenced according to that crime. And it's like a slide rule like this. The
yo,
judge now has no more discretionary measures. You get whatever that slide rule tells you, you get. That's the minimum. That's the mandatory. Judges can't do anything about it. Well, that changed. We didn't know that. We were still operating under the assumption that we're going to get like everybody else did, man. It's slap on the wrist, or 12
yeah,
months that you do 9 of, and you come home and we've kept the lights on and the bills paid and your family fed, and you just come back home and go right back to work again.
yeah. Back
That's
in
how it
the,
used to work under that assumption. But no, they changed it. Now, when you got busted with such as what I got busted with, if you got one indictment, each indictment has 4 counts on it: conspiracy to import, conspiracy to possess, conspiracy to possess over so many 1,000 kilograms, and possession with the intent to sell in the United States jurisdiction. Each one of those is 10 years to life. So, and $1 million. So you've got 40 years mandatory to life and a $4 million fine if you got indicted with one indictment. I had 4. I had 160 years mandatory to life and $16 million in fines for that, just under 400,000 pounds.
wow.
That they later on discovered that was nothing, man. I mean, they didn't even scratch the surface with. But what they wanted from everybody, since now they're giving out mandatory minimums, they began by getting, of course, the guy in Colombia. He started it off. When they put on their team.
Yo,
Well, when this bust went down, he went fully undercover and protected by the government. Brought in 2 other other little guys that were, when I say little guys, that were younger. I had kids that were 20 years old running boats, because that's how I learned.
yeah,
When you take a 20-year-old, 21-year-old, and you tell them you're getting 40 fucking years, there's nothing that can be done about it unless you tell on somebody and you cooperate. Dude, they're talking about their grandmas, their grandpas. They're telling on everybody, man. Because
yeah.
that's quite hard to wrap your mind
Oh,
around. I
yeah,
couldn't even wrap my mind around that, and
yeah,
I still today never could.
yo,
So what happened was, because of these extraordinary sentences, they start telling names.
yo,
But what the government did, and I found this out, was by design rather than by accident, was that if you were given this cooperation deal, by the government, you were also given within the parameters of that agreement immunity from prosecution from anything that you've ever done,
Wow.
except for one count on one thing that we'll hold back. So we got to give you something,
Yeah.
but this will give you the opportunity and allow you to freely tell us what you've done without being without any reprisal, being offered, immunity plus being able to tell the story. What wound up happening was after the first 38 of us went, they started falling like dominoes because these are mandatory sentences and people are
Yeah.
like, God, they're going off. Along with that, like I said, they were giving them this deal with immunity from prosecution. Well, they were giving that deal to everybody that cooperated.
Holy shit.
We'll give you immunity. Just tell us everything you know. Well, what wound up happening was once they figured out what the fuck was going on, the guys that are getting popped are saying, look, they're going to offer you this deal to cooperate. They're going to give you immunity from prosecution if you cooperate with them and give them names. Telling Teddy, Willie, and Jimmy and Johnny and shit, they got the deal. They got immunity. You can't hurt them. So everybody started telling on everybody else. They weren't hurting anybody because everybody had fucking immunity. It was a beautiful thing.
Holy
And
shit.
it was actually very clever within the design of this the structure of this deal with the government,
Yeah.
simply because it didn't matter to them that a lot of these people were saying a lot of the same names.
Yeah.
All that told the government was they're getting all the right people, you know. So what happened was almost everybody got this deal. When it came to me, they wanted cooperation. They wanted to know who's in Miami, who you fucking who are you flying to, wherever you're flying in the Caribbean, no, I'm sorry, no, just shoot me,
Yeah.
shoot my family, shoot my dog and my cat, and kill the fish while you're at it, because that's what you're asking me to do.
Yeah.
That's what you're asking of me, because even though all the years of our involvement didn't involve guns and dangerous scenarios in any way, you go throw one of these fuckers under the bus like that, man, they're going to come back at you and
Oh
do
yeah.
exactly what they're very good at doing, and that's making your ass and your whole family and the dog and the fish disappear. So fuck you, I can't help you. So I had to take my fucking lumps.
Yeah.
There was no immunity for me by telling on names and giving you that. But what ultimately wound up happening, because they knew I wasn't going to give up the names of the people that was most important to them, and those were the overseas connections. Fuck that. That wasn't happening. But what they wanted to know, and two United States Treasury agents came to interview me one day. They were taking me in and out of the jail. I was 10 months in county jail being interviewed by the fucking government,
Holy shit.
asking me different things about questions about this and that. And I said, well, I won't, they wanted to know finally, even though I wasn't going to cooperate with these two Treasury agents, he said, look, the U.S. prosecutor, Susan Deltuva, she comes running into the room. She goes, look, it's not cooperation we're wanting to me. It's we be wanting to know is how you were able to do this for this decade plus, and we couldn't catch you.
Yeah.
And I said,
Wow.
well, I can tell your dumbass is that. I won't give you any names, but I'll
Yeah.
tell you how it works. You can glean anything out of what I tell you by way of personnel, and more power fucking to you, but you're not going to hear the names out of me. So I started telling
Yeah.
them how this all worked, just like I told you. And,
Wow.
and all your listeners, in detail about how it all worked and how it all put together, and this is the ins and the outs and the pay and all that kind of shit. Well, here I am, a couple of months later, them taking me out twice a week and giving me a sandwich, and a Coke, and,
Yeah.
telling these stories. They would take me out of my cell and handcuff me, and they would chain my belly chain. They would chain me to my belly, and then from my belly chain to my ankle shackles. And I'm doing the convict shuffle down the sidewalk, every morning to the federal building next door, greeting people on the good morning, good morning. How you doing? This. Well, for months they've been doing this and asking me about how it worked.
Yeah.
And I'm telling them the first day, these two Treasury agents, I asked them, I said, do you know the geography of Everglades City? How many roads in there and how many roads out of there are there? Well, there's one. And I said, yeah, there's one fucking road. And I said, how many roads are there from there to Miami directly? Well, there's one road, US 41. I said, yeah, you're damn right. There's one goddamn road in there, one goddamn road out of there. And how do you think we got all those millions of pounds of weed to Miami? I said, we didn't take it over there on the backs of pelicans and fucking porpoises, man. It went down that one goddamn road, and half the time we're waving at you, it was going down the road,
Wow.
And so, I'm telling them all this shit, week after week after week. And next thing you know, they take me out one day, take me down that same hallway, only they pass the room that I usually go into. And they take me in a room where this one guy sitting there all by himself, and he's got a polygraph machine.
Yeah.
They're going to put me on a lie detector. They're hearing about all these millions upon millions of dollars and all this cash in Everglades and all this weed that's going across this little island. They weren't believing me. They thought I was full of shit.
Holy
So
shit.
they hooked me up to the fucking lie detector and this polygraph and shut the door with me and this one guy in there. And half hour later, I go walking out of there with a big ass grin on my face. And I turn around and look at all these fucking investigators and they're scratching their head going, fuck, he's telling the truth.
Holy shit. Yeah.
And that's what they got out of me,
Yeah.
So when it came time for my sentencing, my attorney, my local attorney, this was too high profile of a case for him. He couldn't take it. He said he advised me to hire his father-in-law, who was a big-time criminal attorney out of Baltimore, and it cost me $1.2 million for this guy. I paid everything, expenses and everything. Even gave him some extra, $1,200,000. That's a night's work.
Yeah.
I said, get him down here. So he did his best for me, and everything he did for me, and we wound up working with the government, and they capped my sentencing at 20 years, regardless of whatever happened. They wouldn't give me more than 20, but because of the mandatory 10 years, they couldn't give me less than 10. So it had to fall somewhere within that range of teens. Well, when it came time for my sentencing, the judge, she's looking down at me. Elizabeth Kovakovich was her name.
Yeah.
And she was a tyrant. She was a tyrannical bitch.
Yeah.
If there ever was one. She, somewhere along the line, somebody must have in her family got fucked up on drugs somehow or somewhere, and she got a crack in her ass. I mean, as wide as the Grand Canyon, dude. And she said, I've got a mission beyond my job, she said, and it's directed at people like you, Mr. McBride. And she said, the men and the women of this country didn't fight World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam for you to come in here and mess it up with drugs. And right then my ass went, you? I knew I was sad at that time. I said, this bitch is out for blood, man. She's fucking serious. And she said to me, she looked me right dead in the eye. And she said, Mr. McBride, she says, because of the invaluable information that you were willing to give up, we didn't consider it, cooperation under the terms of the agreements or how it's written in the United States codes annotated. Nevertheless, she says, I'm going to sentence you to Federal Correctional Institution, FCI, in Tallahassee, Florida. And she went on to describe it as being the hub within the Federal Bureau of Prisons, whereby if you wanted an education of any type, college degree, any kind of thing like that, submitted a request for transfer to be taken to Tallahassee, where they had brought in professors and teachers that were civilians into the prison and gave you an education that you wanted on the government. They encouraged this sort of thing. So in my prison I was sent to, Tallahassee, she said, I'm going to send you there because it is the hub of education. What I'd like you to do while you're there, Mr. McBride, is spend the time and take advantage of the facility, because I'd like you to be able to, when you released and you come home from that facility, to be able to make the kind of money that you're accustomed to making. I almost laughed out loud at her. I had to stop myself because I'm thinking in my head, where in the fuck are you going to send me and teach me how to make a couple $1 million overnight?
Yeah.
I want to know where that fucking school is, man. Send me there. But little did I know that it would have a reciprocatory effect here 30 some odd years later after having written a book about this goings on. A lot of the information that I gleaned as a writer, as far as how to integrate the sights and the sounds and the smells and the textures and all that goes along with the story and the ambience that you can't get unless you explain it to an audience. I was taught that by a bank robber who actually ran the legal library in the prison.
Yeah.
Every federal prison by law is required to have a legal section that allow you access to legal material by law, so you can work on your own cases. And they have clerks that work within those areas that help guide you through the law process, and
Yeah.
finding cases that represent yours and are similar to yours. Because here in the United States, our form of jurisprudence works on what they call precedent, meaning that if somebody is guilty of a crime that is similar into yours, you
Yeah.
cannot be adjudicated differently. You have to be adjudicated fairly and similarly in the same way.
Yeah.
That's why you say you're a bank robber, okay? Depending on what circumstances may have happened within the ongoings of that committing that crime, may dictate certain things, but nevertheless, you cannot get more than X amount of years for bank robbery, let's say.
Yeah.
That keeps the system fair.
Yeah.
So what I did is my job was to not only keep the annotated books up to date with the new cases, because every new case that's adjudicated within the federal system has to be put in these books
Yep.
and added to that bank of reservoir that you use to cite cases that are similarly spoken of about your case,
Yep.
because this guy has similar things as to my reading and the reason same as his. So you can't be adjudicated one way and him another. You have to be done the same way. So that's the process that these guys go through. And this is the process by which I went to the University of Honolulu and got a degree in law to
Holy
learn
shit.
this.
That's
I
awesome.
also got a degree in literary arts at the same time, because what the fuck else are you doing in prison?
Yeah.
Not only that, Dennis Lehman, the bank robber I was telling you about, who was head of the law clerk,
Yep.
was a published author in his own right at that time. He had published a
Wow.
book called The Get Backs of Mother Superior through Random House, and it's an amazingly funny story. But about prison story, obviously. But
Yeah.
he had taught a writing class in prison that I had been taken part of, and he is the one who I credit for teaching me those little nuances about, sight and sound and feeling the wind in your face, and just those little extras that make the story a little more engaging. I learned
Yeah.
that from him. He was 28 years in when I first met him. He had already
Wow.
done 28 years.
That's a long
And
time.
the guy that you're reading about now, I think you're just getting to know George,
Yeah.
that we played gin rummy with every night. And the book, by the way, for those of you who are interested in maybe picking it up, is not just a boring statistical romp through the war on drugs, man. It's just simply me sitting on the there it is, me sitting on the couch next to you, telling you these outrageously crazy ass fucking stories that no one on earth would believe if the law enforcement wasn't backing up my story.
Yeah.
So George, being a bank robber himself, had been in 32 years before I met him. And each night we would play a game of gin rummy, and each night we would tell each other a story and that's just how the story goes. It weaves back and forth between time in prison and this craziness of pot hauling. Plus, you hear George's story about how he, got,
The helicopter, was
caught
it?
up in, all the years of bank robbing and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much the nutshell of it, and and how it wound up. Years ago, I'd always been to, if I go out to some place, or I'd be doing something with some friends that knew me and knew my history. They'd say, "Hey, tell my buddy one of those crazy ass fucking stories, man. He's never gonna believe it." And
Yeah.
inadvertently, they'd always come up with something like, "That would make an awesome book," or what a
Yeah.
cool movie that would make, shit like that. So
Yeah.
always having heard this, and I guess somewhere in the back of my mind it stuck. The type of relationships that are forged within an environment such as that are the type of relationships so that can't be forged in any other way.
Yeah.
They're very special, in that they're unique in their origins. They're unique in the people that are the subject of those origins. He was really special, very dear to me. So I had to write that. And like I said, it's not a boring statistical romp. It's just me sitting here telling you this crazy ass shit, man.
Yeah.
And it's meant to be fun. And as an author, I see the 100 and almost 40 something reviews that are on Amazon right now. There isn't a bad one amongst them all. I mean, one guy kind of goes off the rails on me a little bit, because I think he was probably either a cop or he might have been a hack at a prison or something like that. But at the
Yeah.
end, he said, I wouldn't mind having a beer with the guy,
Yeah.
shit like that.
Yeah.
Nothing is more gratifying to an
Yeah.
author than to have your work turn out exactly how you intended. And my intention was pull your ass to the front of the seat in the first couple of sentences and keep you there till the last word is read. Like I was saying, I was invited to meet the director for Homeland Security, which is a new thing here in the United States since 9/11 took over.
Yeah.
And he invited me to come and have a meeting with him at his office. He said, if you wouldn't mind showing up, you wouldn't mind coming to my office. I don't give a fuck, dude. I'll show up, you know.
Wow.
And so I had a chat with him, and that was when he imparted some really interesting things to me that I didn't know. And of course, I gave him some information that he obviously didn't know.
Yep.
And one of them being, most importantly, from my aspect of it, was that the turning point that took place and the paradigm shift in cannabis in North America took place was when the United States government came in and did Operation Peacemaker. That's when they took me and they wound up taking down through the mandatory minimum sentencing process. Yep. Everybody that ever handled a bale of pot, seemed like, in Southwest Florida was on that list somehow, because it just wound up taking it all apart. Yep. And he had told me that when that took place, that literally ended Caribbean marijuana from coming into the United States. It stopped at that point. That's the impact and the significance of what it was we were doing. And because of that, what wound up happening was the Sinaloa cartel. Everybody's heard of these people.
Yeah.
There's nothing new about them. They've been around for fucking ever. What took place was, and I didn't know this until I was informed by him, was simply that, you know, when they took us out of the picture, the importation, and we were the hub of marijuana smuggling of North America, as I described earlier. That's how everybody in the news and in the media here in the United States or North America describes Southwest Florida. And that when that happened, the Sinaloa cartel wound up springing up and taking over, because they ended the cocaine importation in Miami that was primarily run by a woman by the name of Griselda Blanco. If you're not familiar with the story of Griselda Blanco, she was the godmother of cocaine. There's a documentary out, I know you might be able to find it down under somewhere, called Cocaine Cowboys. That's a story of Griselda Blanco. And who she is the person that taught Pablo Escobar how to gather the coca paste and create the cocaine hydrochloride. That's who she is. Pablo Escobar became the murdering, killing piece of shit son of a bitch, blowing airplanes out of the sky to kill congressmen who weren't even on them, son of a bitch. He learned to be that by her. Wow. Because she turned Miami into a killing ground in the 80s and the 70s and 80s. If there was a conflict anywhere on the earth, barring any other conflict, I should say, and I mean a war, Miami was the most dangerous place on earth to be at that time. And that was because of that fucking Griselda Blanco bitch right there. Wow. And that's one reason why none of us ever wanted to get involved in cocaine, was because of the kind of people that were involved in that. Yeah. And, you know, the way we worked. You owe me 40 million, I keep 40 million a year. Shit, I bring in 40 million of cocaine. There's no way in hell I keep $40 million worth of your cocaine. No little payment. Yeah. I mean, these people are just crazy. And this bitch was killing people like she's ordered pizza. I mean, that's what she turned Miami into. Well, that being said, when the local government from Broward and Miami, or Dade County, Miami and Fort Lauderdale, got together and begged the United States government to come down and intervene, because there was an occurrence that took place that set it all off, and that set the federal government in motion in South Florida, was called the Dadeland Mall Massacre. It happened at an ABC liquor store in a mall in Miami, and was Colombians on Colombians and Cubans on Cubans. And they were the ones that worked outside the same restraints and somewhat restraint that the American mob was running under. The American mob, you don't kill civilians, you kill your own. That's how they worked. That was the law within the mob industry. Well, when it came to the cartel industry, you don't just kill the people you're going there to kill. You kill everybody else standing around and anybody else that's visible. That's how it happened. Well, Dadeland Mall Massacre was just that. 2 Cubans trying to kill 2 Colombians in a liquor store wound up shooting up the whole fucking liquor store, killing everybody inside and shooting at anyone on the outside in the parking lot that they could shoot at. That's with automatic weapons. And what is Miami and Dade Broward County Sheriff's Department carrying? 38s and 45s. Yeah. These guys are carrying AK, you know, and now they're under a whole different ball game. The whole thing has changed. So they asked the United States government come down and intervene and help us out, because we cannot get this under control. Miami was a war zone, literally a death killing field So once they got that under control, it took Griselda Blanco out of the picture. If you're familiar with the movie Blow,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a cool movie.
um, the person that wrote George is actually was a friend of mine several years prior to his death. We got to know
Wow.
one another. He was actually died near his hometown in Boston, in Baltimore, or Massachusetts rather. He's the person that wrote his book. Bruce Porter actually published through my publisher as well. That's one of the two reviews that appears on the back of my book was Bruce Porter, who wrote the book Blow.
Wow.
He got a copy of it and it blew his mind. He says, "I got to give this guy a review of my book."
Yeah.
So, but more to the point was that George was working similar at a similar time as I was.
Yeah.
And if you're familiar with the movie, his partner in the movie, his name was Diego.
Yeah.
But in reality, his partner in real life, his name was Carlos Slater. Pablo Escobar's best buddy growing up was Carlos Slater, was George Young's partner, actually. They
Yeah.
changed his name because Carlos Slater went into witness protection and has never been seen or heard from since George went to prison.
Wow.
That's why they changed his name, used Diego instead. But that part of the story, was, he said, George actually told me himself, a lot of what they told about the story of his life was true. A lot of what Hollywood was in there. When they talk about the island in the Bahamas called Norman's Cay,
Yeah.
where Diego, or Carlos rather, was starting to run his cocaine from South America through the Bahamas to there. Norman's Cay actually is Norman's Cay. It
Wow.
exists. It's called Norman's Cay, and Carlos Slater did buy it.
Yeah.
He did buy out all the properties except one he couldn't buy from this old man who just firmly stood his fucking ground. This guy had
Wow.
balls the size of a rhinoceros. He had to,
Yeah.
or he didn't know who he was dealing with. But Slater owned the island, and it was called Norman's Cay. And to this day, if you fly over that very island, you can see the planes that just barely made it underwater, and those that didn't quite get off and back in the water.
Wow.
They're dotted around that island everywhere because the water is so crystal clear blue. You can see every plane that didn't make it.
Holy shit.
But long story short being that, and I can go on and on. George had wound up, at that point, once he found out about Norman's Cay, getting out of the business. So he wanted to go back to Panama where he and Carlos had deposited $30 million each. If you recall in the movie,
Yeah.
they went down there and he made the comment about, well, I give you $30 million and you give me this little book,
Yeah.
the receipt book for the account.
Yeah.
Well, when he went back to get his money, if you recall in the movie, the bank manager said, "Wish you'd have called because the Panamanian government has appropriated your funds."
Yeah.
Noriega took his money,
Yeah.
and Noriega was notorious for that, taking their money. Well, I had worked 3 times with Noriega. First time, I didn't know who the fuck he was because, like I said, my deal with Carlito and Leo in Miami was, you just bring me the shit. I don't care who it is and it belongs to.
Yeah.
But another story for another time. I wound up doing a job with Noriega, and he wound up knowing me, and in a matter of speaking. But my connection in Colombia, my guy that I worked with in Colombia, he told me after he heard about whose 60,000 pounds I just got and delivered. He warned me at that
Yeah.
time. This was like in 1988, no, 86, 87. He warned me.
Yeah.
He said, "Timmy," he says, we're friends, we do good business. He says, "But let me just warn you, don't ever give that man your money."
Yeah.
In other words, don't ever put your money in one of his offshore accounts, in one of his banks, because he will fucking take it from you.
Yeah.
Well, what happens 5 years later? He takes George Young's fucking money, and he takes Carlos Slater's money. He was right. So that's why I never put money in a Panamanian bank. I worked with the guy.
Yeah.
He didn't know me. I didn't know him for shit, but I made him like $80 million or some shit. My first load for him was 60,000 pounds, and that's a whole story within itself. But yeah, I mean, it's just, the story continues, man.
Yeah.
It goes on and on. I'd be really excited and very grateful to come back and spend some more time with you, and and just continue, because there are times when I've been known to do some of these podcasts at 6-7 hours,
Yeah.
and then turn them into 2 or 3 episodes. But
Yeah, man.
I think for now, I think for now you've got a pretty good taste, haven't you, brother?
Yeah, man, it's been awesome. This is fucking cool. When the guys they say they seize their property and take all the money and stuff when they go into jail, do they take
Right.
everything? So when they come out, they got nothing.
Well, in my case, they got almost everything.
Yeah,
It's a little bit difficult, but my case, in a case such as mine, in the earlier beginnings, when we understood that, now we're talking about life in prison.
yeah,
Um, and prior to that, the guys were getting 18 months, 10 months, 12 months, they could save them. We could keep a couple $1 million hidden somewhere. The family would keep it, or like that. Then they'd have money to come back to. It never occurred to me to try to save any money because, dude, I wasn't coming home.
yeah,
If, as far as I knew, I wasn't going for life. I was going away for life,
yeah,
or I was at least going away for 40 years at the minimum. So I went on a fucking spending spree, dude. I was yahooing it like a bitch.
yeah,
I was pulling shit and pranks. And one guy I sent in to buy a car, a Camaro, because I knew the dealer or the salesman was at the Chevy dealer where I bought my Corvette. I knew him from another dealership, and I saw him back in there one day. So I told the owner, the Chevrolet owner, I said, I'm going to buy that Camaro right there. And I gave him cash for it, bought outright. Tomorrow, I'm going to have a friend come up looking around for cars, and I want that guy over there, to
yeah,
take him in that car for a test drive because he's going to be looking for a Camaro, and I want him to take that car. So
yeah,
he came up the next day, and I told the guy that I sent up there, I said, when you pull out of there, dude, there's just about maybe not even a quarter mile down the street, there's a Kmart with a big, huge parking lot, it's department store like looking place with, the night lights, the parking lot lights have these cement buttresses around the bottom of them. So in case people back into them and shit.
yeah,
And I said, what I want you to do is take that car for a test drive down the street to that parking lot. And before you get back here, I want you to try to hit every one of those fucking lights in the parking lot that you can hit. Dude, he came back. That car was squealing. I mean, it had no side windows in it. The front window was a mess. You could
Fuck.
hardly see out a fucking thing. I mean, he just destroyed his fucking car. And the guy was screaming his nuts off. And he was in the seat next to him, strapped in. He's screaming, "Fuck!" I can hear him coming in. And as soon as he pulled in, the guy stops right in front of me, and the owner of the dealership standing next to me.
Yeah.
First thing, he went right from motherfucking son of a bitch. He looks at me, you cocksucker, you. He knew I put him up to it, right? He couldn't even
Yes.
open the door fast. He couldn't even get out of the car. He had to climb out the window. The car was beat to shit so bad. And
Yes.
that was just to take, $25,000 on a brand new IROC,
Yeah.
V8, try to get rid of it, man. Because I wasn't coming home as far as I knew.
Yeah.
Spend, 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 give, give, give. I get 80 acres of wooded land to my parents in northern Wisconsin
Yeah.
that they logged every year and made extra cash on. They made twice that probably every year and just logging it out.
Yeah.
And just some things like that. But for the most part, the money was gone, man. I mean,
Yeah.
the millions I was making, I was trying to get rid of as fast as I was making. And
Yeah.
and if it was like buying the houses, I got a house in the Bahamas that I got just one day because Carlito and Leo were tired of counting money.
Holy
We've been
shit.
counting for almost 3 days. And when we get down, it was always their tradition, being Cubans that they are.
Yeah.
In that era, cocaine was prevalent. Obviously, Miami was awash with the shit. Um, we'd get down to like the last couple hours, the last half a day of counting money, and Carlito or Leo would send one of their cousins down the street to get some coke. Well, they wouldn't come back with a gram or an 8 ball or some shit. They come back with a half a pound or some shit like that. Next thing
Holy
you
shit.
know,
Yeah.
I'm the only one in the kitchen counting. Everybody else is peeking out the fucking windows like this, trying to see, the cops behind every car and every tree out there.
Holy shit.
So we're sitting there one day, and then Carlito sends his cousin down the street. Cousin comes back, and they're all like 20 minutes later, everybody's at the windows, and I'm counting money, and I hear Carlitos. He's standing at the window, and he turns his head he's still looking out the window, and he goes, How much is left out there, Timmy?" He's talking to me from the living room out of the kitchen. And I said, I don't know, man. There's like just under 300,000 maybe on the table. And so he's quiet for about another 10, 15 minutes. So I'm getting down to about 250, 260, 260,000. I think, I can judge by what's on the table. And he goes, you know what? I got this house in the Bahamas I've been trying to get rid of. He says, I've got an eye on this place in St. Martin on the north end, on the French end. He said, I'd like to get rid of that place and move down to St. Martin. He said, would you be interested? And I said, well, sure. How much you want for it? He says, well, how much you say was left on the table out there? And I said, I don't know, it's about 250,000. He said, I'll take that. So I just went, shoved it off the table into his box, and I bought that house in the Bahamas.
Wow.
Just like that, it was mine. So that later that afternoon, he said, let's go have a look. So we get in this little private plane, we fly over there. And it's 4-bedroom. It was right on Paradise Island, which is where, if you're familiar with the resort Atlantis, pretty well-known resort. Atlantis is on Paradise Island. And at that time, when I owned that house, you open the front doors up, and the Britannia Towers Casino and Paradise Twin Towers Casino was right across the street. That's how close I was to the beach and the casinos.
Holy shit.
Well, it was 4 bedrooms, 4 baths, 4-car garage. It came with a Volkswagen parked in the garage, and a nice swimming pool area in the back. And it was a beautiful house. In the Bahamas. I got it for fucking nothing. That was only one of 5 I had in the Caribbean. I had them all over the place.
That is awesome.
But that was one that they wound up not getting. They only got. I had 2 houses here in the States. Are the only 2 houses they got. The other ones I just abandoned. I never went back. They're probably overgrown, or somebody's fucking knocked them down or was living in them. I don't care. It's just they were. I didn't want to have that hassle with it. They've already taken enough from me. They don't need to know about this yet. But that's just an example of just how stuff went. How crazy it. How something so simple as a money counting day can turn into me buying a fucking house in the Bahamas. just because the guys don't want to count money anymore. Yeah. So a lot of fun stuff. Like I said, there was times when it could have been, it had to be taken, quite seriously, because what we were doing was absolutely very serious. And, none of us ever took that for granted, which I think was another unique thing about the whole tapestry of this inner workings, is that, first of all, for everybody to be silent for all those years and nobody really ever knew. People in town kind of had their idea, but they never saw it. If you don't see it, even the sheriff of Everglades, C.W. Sanders, is a wonderful man, just really a kind, helpful. When he wasn't sheriff, he was a handyman. He was helping people set up their trailers and move them, and it was in our community because everybody knew everybody. It was like everybody was family-ish, kind of. And because he was part of that, he never saw actually a bale of pot or any of us carrying a bale of pot, so there was really nothing he could do about it.
Yeah.
But he's not a stupid man. Neither are these other people. We could get by on that premise. You haven't seen it, so I haven't done it.
Yeah.
So I got a brand new truck. I could buy a Corvette. I could buy that Corvette with no problem, because I was, during season when you're stone crabbing, like I said earlier, it's very lucrative business.
Yeah.
Just as a crewmate on the back end, in a week's time, I'm making not only a salary, I'm making $8 an hour. I'm making a percentage of the catch as well. So I could be bringing in as much as anywhere from $1,200 to $2,500 in 5 days or 7 days, depending on if we, how we worked. So it was, I could live to a certain means. But when it got to be, my spending money beyond my means, like I told you, there were ways about that. Plus, you drive out onto the island or into Everglades, it's mostly trailers, and things like that. Anything that's a permanent structure or a house up on stilted home up, raised up, are generally people that have been there, generational families and founding families and people like that have been there for a while, but the rest of us are mostly trailers. And there was nothing when you drove out onto the island unique or outstanding about the trailer. There was just, a trailer with a car, a truck parked, nice truck parked next to it. That guy's a stone crabber, maybe he's a puller and like that. But the difference was when you open the door and walk inside. That's when you have all the finest Berber carpeting and
Yeah.
the leather furniture and the latest electronics and televisions and
Yeah.
hi-fi stereo and shit. I mean, refrigerator, appliances. So that's when everything changed, man. Was when you walked inside. It was like you walked into a whole different place, man,
Yeah.
and it was hidden out of view. And that's just how a lot of us lived. That's how a lot of us had to work. I was what story I tell. You're gonna find it in the book. I mean, it was just the money thing was almost laughable,
Yeah.
you know. And in that I went to the laundromat one day, because we didn't have washer dryers in our trailers and shit. There was a laundromat right there. Everybody on the island used. I mean, the island's only 129 acres. There
Yeah.
isn't, and at that time, there isn't 100 people living on the island. The rest are living in Everglades City.
Yeah.
And Jackie, she ran the laundromat and little post office thing that was kind of connected to the building. She also ran the trailer park in which we first all lived in when we first moved there. Well, I'm using the laundry one day. I get my shit done. I take out the wash, throw it in the dryer, and I'm drying the shit. I brought it back. Brought it back to my trailer, and I'm folding my clothes, and I'm in there with my buddy Todd Bigelow, who you'll read about. My one of my best buddies was WWE World Wrestling Federation champ Bam Bam Bigelow,
Yeah.
Beast from the East.
Yeah.
He and I became the dearest friends, and his brother Toddy's today. I talked to him yesterday. He's still one of my dearest friends. Todd and I are in this trailer smoking a doobie, and I'm folding my clothes just fresh out of the dryer, and there's this knock on my trailer door. When I open the door up, and this cloud of smoke hits this woman in the face, Jackie. She goes, and she's got a handful of 20s, $20 bills in both hands, a wad of them like this. She goes, I believe these belong to you, Timmy. He said, I found them in the washing machine that you used. They were, when it went into the spin cycle, they were plastered all around the inside of that washing machine. I didn't see them when I took my clothes out.
Holy
There was
shit.
about $2,500 in 20, she said. It was just
Wow.
pasted on up the side, the inside of the washing machine. Thanks, Jackie. I grabbed those damn $20 bills and kicked the door shut with my foot. I didn't. Had she not
Yeah.
showed up with it, I would have never known it was there. I would never lost. I
Wow.
would have never known I lost. I
That's
mean, that's how
crazy.
stupidly ridiculous this shit was, man.
Yeah,
Oh
it's a
God,
good problem to
some of
have.
the stories, dude. There's so much shit. I mean, I could talk about, even stuff that, like I said, there were other pot haulers doing other shit,
Yep.
and some of the guys would get, for whatever their reasons were, guys would get spooked or scared or something, and they throw their shit and just take off, and now their
Yep.
shit's just floating every fucking place. We never had to throw our shit because we had our shit
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
We never had to dump a load and run because we were scared of it. And a lot of times these guys were throwing it and nothing was even, there was no reason to do it in the first
Holy
place.
shit.
Well, that being said, and as often as it happened, and the pot was crazy in those days, and it happened quite regularly. But in this one
Yeah.
instance, we were on our way to pull traps one morning. Legitimately, we're going to go pull a day's work, and
Yeah.
sun's just coming up, and Captain Billy's daddy's running the boat. Hubert, he's
Yeah.
actually the owner of the boat. All of a sudden, I'm in the bottom bunk. Mark's in the top bunk. We're sleeping. All of a sudden, Hubert's like, he's kicking my bunk with his foot. He's going, there's bales out there, boys. Holy shit. We heard that. I jumped up. I put on my crab boots, and we ran out and standing on the deck of the boat. And as far as we could see, dude, I mean, it's the water's slick, calm as glass. As far as we could see, there was bales of pot floating in the water, dude. I
Holy
mean,
shit.
as far as we could see, there must have been 800 or so of these fuckers out there, and it couldn't have happened too much longer since we had
Yeah.
gotten there or prior to us getting there, because a lot of them were floating really high out of the water.
Holy
And
shit.
depending on how well they're packaged, would determine how much saltwater intrusion that bale would get. But if you got to them early enough, like we did, and the boats just, I mean, plowing through them. That's how many of these fuckers there were. And we could literally go around to the ones that were floating the highest in the water, hook them with our hooks or crab poles that I was telling you about.
Yeah.
We start throwing these fucking things on the deck of the boat. This is free shit we just
Holy
found.
shit.
And we get, I don't know, we're not even counting the fuckers. We were like, yeah, what we got, We're throwing. We got about 150 of these fucking things on the deck, and all of a sudden Hubert comes out of his wheelhouse. He's going, "That's enough!" He's screaming, "That's enough!" He says, "No, no, no!" He says, "Throw some of them fuckers back in there." He says, the reason was because he had already called Billy to come out in his other boat, which was nearly the size of our fishing boat, but we couldn't put on more than he could take, anyways.
Yeah.
So we wound up with about 110, 105 pieces or some shit like that. Now, keep in mind, these are 25 to $27,000 a piece. So if we kept 100 of them, that's $2.7 million in fucking found money
Floating in the water.
on the way to work. We found it on the way to work. So Billy comes out in his boat. We throw those 100 bales onto his, and he takes off with it, stashes it in the woods somewhere. We go on to our trap line and go on about our day like nothing happened. So throughout the day, and this is the way it was then, if somebody found bales floating, they were called square grouper. This is what they were nicknamed. That was the name coined back when the first generation was losing bales off the side of their boat, and they'd wash up on shore and people would find them. They call them square grouper. A grouper are a type of a fish that are a delicacy. And they get rather big sometimes. They can get huge groupers. So they just called them square grouper, because they're floating bales. And that was the key word, coined word for floating bales. Well, when somebody hears that on the radio, somebody calls on the VHF over the radio, and there's square grouper out here, guys. And anybody in town with a radio and a boat that hears this shit, they're gone, man. They're out there getting themselves some of this free shit too, because it's free. Once it hits the water, it belongs to whoever fucking grabs it, right?
Yeah.
So we're working halfway through the morning. We're getting these little boats are coming up to us, and they're yelling, "Where is the shit? Where is the shit?" We're thinking it's about 4 miles, 5 miles over that way, and we're yelling at them, you better hurry up because it's been there a while, So, but it didn't make any difference because, it's not water soluble. The cannabinoids aren't water soluble, so they're not going to rinse off the plant. They're going to get a little dryish or taste differently because it had salt water in it. But if you rinse it with fresh water, you're not going to get top dollar for it, but you're still going to get a pretty penny for it. Found fucking money.
Yeah.
So everybody's out there getting their piece of that shit, and we just happened to get $2.7 million worth of it one day, split 4 ways. Wow. I made, $441,000 that day just going to work.
Just going to work. Nice.
Or was it? No, 641,000. Good day.
Good day. Awesome.
Subscribe to my buddy Thomas here and listen to some of the craziness that goes on in his own world, but also you'll get a glimpse of some other things that I've done that actually tell some stories that you're not going to hear. It's because there's like I said, there's over 30 years and 3 generations of storytelling that I can't do in 2 hours. And it's as much as I'd love to be able to spend all day and do that, but I can only keep you engaged for so long, and then you come back for another little taste of it. But you got, at the time we just spent together, you got this much of something that's this big, which is a lot of fun, which is why I would be grateful and humbled if you would if you were to invite me back. I certainly would. And I don't talk much about when I do things like this, talk much about the guys that I that were closest and dearest to me in prison, when I spent those years in prison, because I did ultimately wind up going. It wasn't for the time that I anticipated it being, as only that was because of some maneuvering on my own, by way of getting a law degree and researching my own backstory and my own guidelines that I was sentenced under, and describing to them how it all worked from A to Z and how that became what their definition of cooperation is. So when they didn't deem what I gave them as substantial cooperation, under their definition, under Black's legal dictionary, which defines their legalese along with not only the government's prosecutors but defense attorneys' legalese, the language that's chosen to define some of these things. It helps you define in even as simple as the word definition. The Latin, the Latin words that's prevalent within the use of jurisprudence and the law. It helps you understand what that means. And their simple definition of cooperation is simply, you ask me for something and I give it to you, I cooperated. Well, you
Yeah.
fuckers asked for my money. I gave you $4 million in a fine. You asked me for how all this fucking shit happened and how it worked and all this kind of shit. And I spent, hours and hours and hundreds of hours and days and weeks telling you how this worked. According to that definition, I fucking cooperated with your asses.
Yeah.
So that's how I submitted my brief under my own, by myself, which is called pro se. I submitted it to the Middle District Courts here in Florida, and I won my reduction of sentence. So I went from that mandatory 10 years that I was ultimately sentenced to. I got out in 4 because of that.
Wow, man.
Everybody else was going home, but everybody else has been home by now. And
Yeah.
if I hadn't have done that, I would have spent 10 years, if not the full 20, in prison.
Holy
But
shit.
having taken it upon myself to do a little bit of studying and go to school,
Yeah.
and when somebody talks about going to prison and being rehabilitated, fuck you. Rehabilitation is not a word that exists within the Bureau of Prisons in any country you're in. Rehabilitation is a made up word. Rehabilitation is something that's only there for you if you choose to take it, or if you choose to define it in whichever way your mind is allowing you to define that word. But it's only there if you take advantage of it. It only means something if you take advantage of it. And they offer you the tools by which to do so, to rehabilitate yourself, if that's the way that you choose to call it. But in my case, I chose to call it educate myself, because I had gone beyond coming into prison. You're evaluated by your intellectual content, plus your educational value content is evaluated through study and through tests that they give you. And my testing ultimately came out at a 4th year college level. I never went to college in my fucking life, man. I graduated high school. I barely did that because I fucked off too much. I was smoking fucking weed and having a blast, being Tim.
Yeah.
But when it came time to, bust down and actually break down and, apply myself, this is what rehabilitation means to me. It means taking the tool that you're offering me and me taking that tool and turning it into something that benefits me,
Yeah.
not your ass. Rehabilitation isn't a term, that's defined by you. It's defined by me. If it even exists in that context, rehabilitation, like I said, and in that context, I don't think there is such a word
Yeah.
as rehabilitation. It doesn't exist in that definition and under that context. That's my opinion, anyways, and the opinion of a lot of people that have done time. They'll tell you the same fucking thing. There are guys in there that's, it's almost like old home week. Hey, dude, you're back. How you doing? It's like a revolving door. These guys come and go. They come and go.
Holy
It's just,
shit.
it's ridiculous.
Yo.
And then there's guys that you see that are in there because they absolutely need, these guys deserve to fucking be here.
Yo.
But then you actually run into people like, that don't deserve to be in a place like that, and the diversity in sentencing, when you get to the level I was at, 4-5, which is just below maximum security, because I was considered an escape risk. And there were 2, it's all explained in the book. There's 2 sets of razor wire fences. There's a killing field in between with razor wire, and there are gun towers every 50 or less yards that you can't see into. And there's 2 guards in each gun tower, and you don't know whether they're looking at you or they got their rifles in their hands or what they got, because that's just the way it is. You're under controlled movement. You're told when to move during the day. 5 minutes before every hour, you have time to get to where you're from, to where you're going, or they lock you down. If you're not where you're supposed to be, you're considered out of bounds, and they throw you on the ground. They put their foot on the back of your head, and they handcuff you, and they put you in jail inside prison.
Holy shit. Oh
That's
my
what the
god.
whole prison. It's just fucking stupid. But then after chow time, after dinner and 4 o'clock count, then the compounds open up where you can pass from one compound to the other without being counted or without controlled movement. This is the evening hours. This was the only time we had to actually get together from different units and socialize and get to know one another and things like that.
Yo.
But ultimately, there were so many people that had gone down during Operation Peacemaker. There were almost 300 people ultimately from South Florida, Southwest Florida, Miami, to as far away as Kentucky, that wound up getting caught up in this whole Operation Peacemaker thing. And because of that, and because of the United States Bureau of Prisons promise to try to, if at all possible, designate you to a prison where you're closest to your family members, so you can get visits from them. they're obligated to try to do that. But because there were so fucking many of us, man, at one time, and at one point in time, there were 23 of us in
Oh,
Tallahassee, all from the same place, all from South Florida. We all knew one another, you know. It was almost a
oh shit.
half an entire unit full of us, you know, at one point. And then everybody's sentences started to go away, and the crowd started to thin out. But that's just how it
Yeah,
was, you know. At one point, there were
yeah,
just so many of us that got popped for pot hauling that, you know, the prisons were full of us.
yeah,
The only way that they ever took the you know the violence in the cartel aspect out of cannabis here in the United States was to fucking legalize it.
yeah,
That knocked the sales right out of that shit. Nobody wants that Mexican brick weed anymore when they
yeah,
can grow a beautiful, you know, glistening in all its goodness, female plant right in your own backyard. You
yeah,
know, I mean,
yeah,
there's a huge difference between that and the other. Plus, the simple fact of the matter is that if people are willing to or have the legal ability now to make a choice, a legal choice, do I want to try cannabis or do I not want to try cannabis? Now they have the ability to make that choice. And if they should make that decision, I would like them to understand it, how it used to be, how
yeah,
it could have been, how it was done by families and generations of families that never fired one single fucking shot at the United States government or anybody who tried to interdict. Not
yeah,
once did it ever happen in that fashion. And I would rather them go into this first time with that knowledge rather than hearing about what's taking place on the southern border of the United States between Mexico and us and the cartels that have just ravaged their own country
yeah.
because of that brick of marijuana trying to get across the border with this shit, you know.
It's
Of course,
crazy.
once they knocked the sales out of that, they turned it to, you know, cocaine and then fentanyl and all the other crap that's killing everybody, you know. So it's like I said, you know, you're never going to stop it. When they took it out
Mm,
of our hands, and I asked this, as a matter of fact, and this is very relevant to the point, the United States Supervisor for Homeland Security, I point blank asked him, I looked him right fucking in the eye and I said, how does it feel having taken this industry out of the hands of generations of people, families that never fired one fucking shot at you and give it to these people over here? Look what they've
yeah.
done to it. How do you feel about that? You know what he said to me? This was 8 years ago. I wish they'd just legalize it. It's a
Ah.
waste of our time. It's a waste of time. He agreed. He absolutely admitted it. And that's when I knew for a fact right now that the government was full of shit, that these
Yeah,
guys are just, you know, they're tired of it, man. That's why a lot of the, you know, I have CIA, Secret Service, even FBI, United States Customs Supervisor John Deasy, who did that Viceland video with me, like I even mentioned several times earlier. These are some of my dearest friends now. These are some of the guys
yeah,
I can pick up and call and say, hey, dude, you
yeah,
know, I met John at the gym. Dude, let's go work out, you know, or some
yeah,
shit like that. It's crazy to think that that sort of thing could take place. But when you stop and you understand and you or read
yeah,
the content that I wrote of an industry that, like I said earlier, had nothing less than a skull and crossbones attached to it, now is being viewed as rather benign in its nature, but at the same sense being, you know, having a medicinal value on
yeah,
top of that. You know, who knew until the studies were, you know, allowed to be made? Did we know, you know, 30 years ago we were hauling medicine?
yeah.
Who had a fucking clue?
The medicine haulers.
We're medicine haulers, man. What the fuck? But anyways, Thomas, dude, thank you for taking the time to just sit and
Yeah,
listen to me, man. I
no,
appreciate it. Again,
thank you, man. You're awesome.
well, I'll tell you what. There's a philosophy of life that I've lived by, several of them that I've tried to adhere by that are very difficult, and you know, and it's a daily process. And the first one being is that I never allow anyone to dictate my emotion. In other words, meaning you can't make me mad. You can't make me happy. You can't make me sad. Only I can do that. If I allow myself to be mad or allow myself to be angry, it's because Tim did that, not you. If I allow you to piss me off or if I allow you to dictate my emotion in any way, shape, or form, then I'm not in charge of Tim anymore. You are. Don't be one of those people. Always be in charge of yourself. Make your own decisions. And second of all, I've always tried to be that guy that never wanted to look back. And I described it in my book in this way. I'm not that guy standing on my tiptoes in the back of a crowd trying to see what's going on up front. I'm that fucking guy that's elbowing my way to the front because if there's some shit going on up there, I want in on it.
Yeah.
That Tim McBride. Tim McBride is also that guy that, and more relevant to your question, Thomas, is that if something that appears to be an opportunity or even in the slightest inclination of an opportunity, I do it because I never want to be that guy that looks back and kicks myself in the ass and says, fuck, I wish I'd have tried that, or I wish I'd have done that. If there's something that it is that you have an urge or a feeling to do, fucking go do it. If it turns out not to be the right thing, you're going to fucking know it. And then that other thing will kick in, and then you go do that, and then you chase that. If there's something you're passionate about, fucking don't waste your time. Get off your fucking ass and go do it. I never in my life doing the shit and growing up the way I did, Forrest Gump tripped my ass and tripped my ass into one thing to another, only because I put myself in the position in order to be able to do that. I set myself up in a lot of ways unconsciously or subconsciously, but I never did anything in my life that I would never do again. And I have absolutely no regret. I have absolutely no animosity toward anyone who may have ever said my name, who gave me up, whoever did anything like that. Why? Because simply it was 30 some odd fucking years ago. And frankly, I got my life back, man. I was fortunate enough to go through the shit that I went through, to be able to tell the story in a fashion in which it should be told, and become a father of two wonderful children, a boy and a girl, Dalton and Kayla. And I'm a grandpa now of two absolutely gorgeous granddaughters, you know, and I would have never gotten that had I not chased after every single opportunity that was put out there in front of me that I deemed worthy of my attention. And I pass that little bit of information on to all of y'all. Go for it, man. Just fucking do it. Don't ever kick yourself in the ass wishing you'd had done that. Do it. The biggest thing I love about it is the total irony of this situation, whereby I was given multiple life sentences for bringing this plant into this country. Now I've got a little card in my wallet that says I can drive a mile down the street and buy this shit over the counter. What's happened?